People were gathering for a big event, for the demonic martial alliance. This alliance was commonly known as the Demon Hall, and many came to see what was happening. The crowds were huge, all pushing to get closer to the grand building. Everyone knew that if you had enough skill, the Demon Hall would teach you their martial arts, no matter where you came from. No one would want to miss such an amazing chance. An older man wished he was younger so he could sign up too. Then he paused, realizing something. He wondered why there was such a serious mood, asking if someone had died. His friend laughed, saying no one had died and that the big tournament hadn't even started yet. But then, his friend noticed a young person nearby, a mortician, standing with a strange look. A mortician is someone who prepares bodies for burial, and this young one seemed very focused. With a determined look, the young mortician seemed to feel that something important was beginning right now. Their eyes glowed red with a powerful resolve, a sign of deep emotion. The mortician, Bu Unsol, was remembering her grandfather. Bu Unsol was the precious name her grandfather had given her, a name full of special meaning. He had taken her in from a snowy, empty field when she was just a small child, saving her life. She followed in her grandfather's footsteps, learning the hard work of a mortician. But she also saw something more in him, like a master of the heaven-cutting sword. When asked why she thought so, she silently recalled her tough work as a mortician, which she endured. She had noticed that even though her grandfather looked thin, the muscles in his left leg, especially his shin, were very strong. These strong muscles were a clear sign of someone who practiced the heaven-cutting sword. Her grandfather confirmed she had noticed well. Knowing her grandfather was a master made her feel safe. He proudly called her a heaven-sent mortician, always praising her sharp eyes. As long as her grandfather was by her side, she felt she could face anything. That was true until a terrible that day arrived, changing everything. On that fateful night, a chilling fog hung low around their quiet home. Her grandfather sat beside her as she lay on the floor, the air thick with a strange tension. Outside, the bamboo rustled, carrying a sense of unease through the night. Her grandfather looked serious, his eyes sharp in the moonlight. He believed that good people rarely came looking for trouble, but those who came on their own often had bad intentions. He gently woke Unsol, asking her to stand for a moment. He suggested they play corpse games, a morbid hide-and-seek they hadn't played in a while. Unsol was surprised to play so late, but her grandfather promised her the ceremonial robe and sword she always wanted, if she won. Her eyes lit up with excitement. She eagerly asked if he was serious. He told her to hide well until the sun rose, and she happily agreed. She hid in the dark, wondering about her grandfather's words. She had to stay hidden until the sun came up. Meanwhile, her grandfather stood ready, his hand on the wall, looking stern. He drew his sword, preparing for whatever was to come. Then, a fierce figure appeared at the door, stepping into the yard. The newcomer sneered, asking if her grandfather thought he could hide like a rat. He repeated his taunt, his presence cold under the moonlit bamboo. The attacker, cloaked in darkness, moved with dangerous speed. He was a shadowy figure, with patterns on his clothes suggesting a powerful sect. He recognized her grandfather, calling him Seven-Bladed Demon Bu Yang. Her grandfather acknowledged the name hadn't been spoken in a long time. The attacker mocked him for refusing the Vice Lord position of the Demon Hall. He scorned her grandfather for now doing such lowly work. A fierce, bright battle erupted between them, full of powerful energy. Red energy swirled, indicating the intense struggle. The ground split and glowed as they clashed. The fight was explosive, with bright light and red energy filling the air. Her grandfather explained that he had taken up the mortician's work. He wasn't doing it to simply survive, but for a deeper reason. He was doing it to make up for his past actions, to atone. He asked his opponent to take his life, but to move their fight elsewhere. He insisted they move so that no innocent people would suffer from their battle. The attacker chuckled, finding her grandfather's request amusing. The attacker agreed, his dark form ready to continue the fight away from the house. Her grandfather firmly told him not to think of running. He stood firm, his old eyes fixed on the attacker. Back inside, Unshol shivered, hiding in a small space. She trembled, the cold getting to her as she cramped into a closet with a shovel. She couldn't stand the cold much longer, but she really wanted that ceremonial robe and sword. She felt so cold, but then realized her grandfather wasn't waiting for her outside. She wondered where he had gone, since he usually waited for her to finish. Perhaps he was called to the magistrate's office so late at night. She remembered how morticians were often looked down on and not treated as real people. Suddenly, she heard a strange sound and looked up, her eyes wide. She cautiously stepped out, seeing a terrible sight in the distance. Her eyes widened in horror as she saw something truly shocking. She quickly ran, her feet pounding the ground as she rushed towards whatever she had spotted. Her steps grew faster, driven by a growing sense of dread. She gasped, completely out of breath, as she finally reached the terrible scene. Her grandfather lay bleeding, his eyes gushing with blood. "Grandfather," she cried out, her voice filled with panic and pain. He was slumped against a tree, barely conscious and gravely wounded. She knelt beside him, asking, "How? What is this?" Her grandfather weakly recognized her. "Yes, grandfather, it's me," she cried, tears streaming down her face, asking how this could have happened. He apologized weakly. He told her he had to leave now. He coughed up blood, telling her not to become a mortician if he died, and she screamed his name, begging him to stop. He ignored her pleas, urging her, Bu Unsol, to listen carefully. He looked at her, tears in his own blood-filled eyes, and told her to never seek revenge. Unsol wept, But deep inside, a dark resolve took hold. She yelled, "I won't!" Her eyes glowed red as she screamed, "They did this to you. I can never forgive them." Her grandfather reached out weakly. If she couldn't forgive, she would follow him into death. He reminded her that she always said the afterlife was no different, and she would rather be with him there than live in this world alone. He thought he would always be able to leave calmly. He told Unsol he had one last request, to go far away. He wanted her to know that the time they shared made him happier than words could say. He smiled faintly through his bloody face as his last breath left him. Unsol sobbed, her heart breaking as he slipped away. His hand fell, and his body collapsed to the ground. "Grandfather?" she whispered, staring in disbelief at his lifeless form. Her world crumbled as she looked at her dead grandfather. A single tear rolled down her cheek, reflecting her intense grief. But then her expression hardened, her sadness slowly replaced by something else. Her face showed a cold determination, a shift from sorrow to grim purpose. She stood over her grandfather's body, which was now prepared, realizing his sacrifice. She understood that his words about not seeking revenge were meant to protect her. But her eyes burned with a fiery red. She knew she couldn't follow his wish. She could not let this go. A red, ominous glow flickered in her tearful eyes, a sign of her new path. She saw that both her grandfather's arms had been cleanly cut off at once. She also noticed a rare sword strike that had come from below, moving upwards. And there was something more. The sword strikes had gone upwards with fierce power. These upward slashes were aimed precisely. They had pierced right into his eyes. A brutal and unique technique. This twisted sword technique was definitely a demonic-type martial art. As she prepared his body, she thought about the kind of person who could inflict such wounds. It pointed to someone skilled in the heavenly yoga art, which allowed control over flesh and muscle. She also examined his back. She found 93 weapon marks embedded in his body, far more than the 66 the 10,000 Blossom Storm could manage. This wasn't just one person's work. She recalled the image of an enemy striking her grandfather with many hidden weapons. She also found discoloration under his tongue, suggesting something more. And there were strange marks under his fingernails. These were all clear signs of poisoning by an extreme toxin, specifically from the rotten flesh decayed blood class. The attackers had mastered the foreign art of heavenly yoga, Nensis device called One Absolute Realm, and handled extreme toxins. Such specific skills pointed to a very particular kind of demonic path figure. She knew there couldn't be many people who possessed all these unique traits. She vowed to definitely find them. Her grandfather's peaceful face gave her strength. Her eyes, now blood red, burned with a fierce desire for revenge. She promised herself she would definitely find them and make them pay. Back in the present, a single drop of something, perhaps a tear or blood, fell onto a document. It landed on a paper bearing the name of the Blazing Sun sect, the faction she was from. She sat at a table, signing the register for the Demon Hall tournament, while two men watched her. One of the men eyed her with suspicion, his expression critical. He dismissed her, thinking she was just another member of the Blazing Sun sect, a minor group trying to get attention, and probably scared by the body waiver. He told her to stop standing around and sign the register, or leave. Her eyes glowed intensely red, revealing her hidden power and fierce determination. A drop of blood marked the paper as she pressed her thumbprint, signing up. When her grandfather died, her entire life had already fallen apart. She felt a sense of emptiness and loss. Nothing was left for her except the path of vengeance, clearly marked by her bloody handprint on the registration. So, she knew this tournament was a critical moment for her. This competition would be the very first step toward achieving her revenge. With clenched fists and burning red eyes, she stared ahead, ready to face whatever came next. She was committed to her path, her determined steps echoing in the hall. For many years, two powerful groups ruled the martial world, the Orthodox and the Unorthodox. The visual depicts a confrontation between a golden dragon and a dark tiger, symbolizing the ongoing conflict. The battle between the two great forces ruling the martial world has continued for many years. One was the Orthodox faction led by the Martial Alliance, who believed in justice. The other was the unorthodox faction, gathered around the demon heaven, which worships only power. The two forces had long maintained a balance, but the orthodox wanted to widen the gap, which marked the birth of the 18 joint successors representing the orthodox. The unorthodox faction, gathered around the demon heaven, which worships only power, the two forces had long maintained a balance, but the orthodox wanted to widen the gap. That marked the birth of the 18 joint successors representing the orthodox. This plan led to the birth of the great righteous masters. Feeling threatened by the martial alliance's checks, the demon heaven also devised a plan to strengthen its own power. Inside their grand buildings, a new plan was set in motion. They quickly started the 10 demon successors plan, and without delay executed the 10 demon successors plan. The main character stood among them, observing the hopeful faces. This was the beginning of Chapter 2. 10 special students would be chosen from anywhere to learn the secret martial arts of the 10 demon sects. That groundbreaking proposal, to pass down the demon heaven's practical martial arts regardless of sect or faction, acted many young people from all over the martial world toward the demon heaven. A huge crowd gathered, eager to try for the demon successor title. The main character stood among them, observing the hopeful faces. Looking around, the main character noticed many people who felt a bit strange. He watched the people carefully. He felt that many of them carried an unusual aura, Could there be someone related to the Hong Su who killed his grandfather? Hong Su was the person who killed his grandfather, a memory that still haunted him. He remembered the pain and loss. Hong Su was an incredibly powerful master. To avenge against him, the main character knew he too must become such a master. But with no sect or martial arts now, he clenched his fist, determined. Becoming a demon successor seemed like his only chance. It was the fastest way for him to become strong. Suddenly, everyone looked up in surprise. A powerful figure arrived. He was followed by many guards. The man stepped forward to address the crowd. He introduced himself as Chief Instructor Hyokrion. His fierce appearance and glowing red eyes commanded attention. He was also known as Chief Instructor Golden Arm Blood Eyes Hyokrion Young. The crowd was shocked that such a famous person, the Chief Instructor himself, was there. The chief instructor declared that this place was for finding the best students for the demon path. He explained that only those who passed all the tests will formally become demon successor candidates. He then announced the first test. For the first test, the masters of the demon heaven will examine your bones and muscles. Many in the crowd looked confused. They started murmuring. Some shouted that it was absurd and that a martial arts fight would be a better way to test them. A man who protested loudly was quickly grabbed and pulled away by guards. Then an examiner simply pointed at someone and told him he passed. The main character wondered if this simple bone test was truly enough. He nervously asked if passing meant moving to the next area, still thinking about the bone and muscle test. Soon, it was his turn for the examination. The examiner put his hand on the main character's shoulder. The examiner was surprised by what he felt. He discovered that the main character's bones and muscles are completely ruined. The examiner was shocked by his condition. It's a wonder he even entered this contest. But then, he noticed something else. He saw a fierce glint in the main character's eyes. The killing intent he sensed was very real and powerful. Still, I can't let you pass. But then, he noticed something else. He reflected that all he had ever learned was washing corpses. He knew deep down that he couldn't pass such a difficult test with his background. But he refused to give up. He felt this can't end like this. The first round of testing ended, and many were disappointed. A young man, very angry, yelled out. He couldn't believe what was happening. How can this be? He protested loudly. He demanded to know why they even bothered with a contest if only bones and muscles mattered for choosing demon successors. He shouted that it was unfair. The chief instructor responded, asking what was unfair, and explained that the most important thing in learning martial arts is bones and muscles. He further clarified that the main hall held this contest to find such prodigies from various places. He then questioned the angry young man, asking how he could complain about fairness when he couldn't even pass the most basic bone test. The young man tried to argue for at least a chance to prove himself. The chief instructor told him not to worry. It promised that in the second gate, prodigies who can master martial arts despite weak bones will be chosen. The chief instructor's eyes glowed with power. He was addressing the entire crowd. He pointed towards the crowd. He announced that they would now begin the second test. The crowd looked on with anticipation. He continued to explain the rules. We shall begin the second gate. From now on, they would all fight each other. You will fight each other and survive. The new rule shocked everyone as they stared at each other in disbelief. They questioned if this brutal task was truly part of the competition. Until only one remains, many wondered why they had to kill fellow members of the demon path. The angry young man who had complained earlier suddenly smiled. This new rule works out fine. If I must kill anyway, this works out fine. If I must kill anyway, he looked around, choosing his first target. He quickly grabbed his weapon. He wielded a long spear. He aimed his sharp spear directly at the main character. He loudly declared that he would start his killing spree with the main character. He launched his spear in a swift, powerful attack. The spear flew towards its target. The attack was fast and deadly. Die. The main character looked surprised as the attack came straight for him. He clutched his chest. Someone powerfully thrusts a spear, and a spray of blood shows that it has hit its mark. The spear pierces deeply into a target, moving with fierce speed and determination. The sharp tip of the weapon is shown just before contact. A figure is violently struck by the spear, getting thrown back by the force of the attack. A large gush of blood explodes from the injured person, indicating a very serious wound. More blood splashes and drips, confirming the severe nature of the injury and the success of the attack. The attacker, a young man with a wild look in his eyes, proudly declares that he can finally kill his enemy today. A red-haired woman cries out in shock, calling out the name Jeok Ryong. Onlookers gasp in disbelief, seeing the terrible scene unfold before them. The red-haired woman falls shaken by the sight of blood and the gruesome death she just witnessed. Another person, presumably Wei Uncheng, falls to the ground heavily bleeding from the fatal strike. The onlooker cries out about the blood. A calm observer notes how skillfully the attacker avoided the ribs and aimed straight for the heart, praising his impressive speed and quick moves. Wei Uncheng, holding his bloodied spear, boldly challenges anyone else to come at him if they want to suffer the same fate. An older, powerful man watches, saying that the people around are full of worthless trash. Another person standing nearby reacts with wide-eyed shock to the events unfolding. A man with a bloodied sword smiled, feeling pleased with himself, saying, as expected. His yellow eye fixed forward as the scene around him seemed to dissolve into mist. Around them, many other fighters lay on the ground, defeated, covered in blood. Only 2 people were left standing in the large courtyard, ready to fight. The smiling man knew if he killed his last opponent, he could become one of the 10 demonic champions, beckoning him to come at me. The hero stood ready, knowing this would be a tough fight. He understood that his opponent was the strongest person in the training ground. With a firm grip on his sword, he prepared for the challenge ahead. Even though the odds were against him, he held a determined look, closing his eyes slightly. He closed his eyes for a moment, gathering his thoughts, while flashes of the defeated fighters were visible in the background. He remembered all the defeated people around him, firmly believing that he could still win this fight. He let out a sharp breath, steeling his resolve. With a strong resolve, he prepared himself for the final confrontation, indicated by a large sound effect. He was ready to face whatever came his way as his imposing opponent slowly stepped forward, holding a blade. The opponent challenged him to show what he had learned, saying, "Let's see what you've got." The enemy grinned, eager to start the intense battle with a sudden movement. The hero stood his ground as the opponent unleashed an attack. The enemy lunged forward, moving very quickly with glowing blue strikes. The hero moved just in time, narrowly avoiding the attack as the blade flashed past him. He managed to dodge the strike, though blood was visible near his chest. His opponent kept attacking with rapid, sharp strikes, taunting him. The hero skillfully moved his body, dodging each blow while an observer watched in the background. He continued to avoid the dangerous attacks. An observer noted that at the end of each enemy strike, the hero twisted his body slightly. This careful movement helped him avoid getting hit in a deadly spot. The hero was bleeding but kept his eyes focused on his opponent, looking determined despite his injuries. He narrowly escaped another swift attack, which the observer highlighted. The observer wondered if the hero had memorized the attack patterns by looking at the bodies of those Nuemun gang had killed. With blood on his face, the hero's eyes glowed with a fierce red light. He narrowly escaped another swift attack. The opponent, Nuemun gang, looked surprised by the hero's apparent resilience. The observer thought it was true that the hero avoided attacks well, but a successful counterattack was a completely different matter. He thought it would be very difficult for the hero to land a good hit in his current state. The hero stood there, bleeding and looking tired, facing his enraged opponent. His opponent, now very angry, lunged again, striking with full force. He moved with speed and rage, shouting that he would grant the hero's wish to die. The hero saw him coming. Knowing this was a critical moment, he realized there was only a very small chance to win. With a determined look, he prepared for his single opportunity, moving quickly away from the powerful incoming attack. He held his small blade ready, focusing intensely. He remembered something important he learned while looking at the bodies of the people Nuemun gang had killed. He recalled the defeated bodies scattered around the courtyard. He knew that his opponent always aimed for the most important parts of the body when trying to kill. The hero's expression showed intense realization. More specifically, Nuemun gang would target the heart and the head. This was a dangerous move, and the hero knew where the fatal points were, highlighted in red silhouette. He concluded that when his opponent showed a desire to kill, his blade would surely aim for the upper body. The hero prepared his movement as the enemy's attack came in, fast flashes of green. The opponent unleashed a powerful and swift attack, just as the hero expected. The hero skillfully moved past the attack. He closed the distance as the enemy rushed by. The enemy looked down, possibly sensing the hero's next move. The opponent unleashed a powerful and swift attack, just as the hero expected. The hero quickly dodged and prepared his counter. As the enemy moved past, the hero quickly struck. He aimed for a specific vital point on his opponent, recalling his grandpa's words. He remembered his grandpa telling him about the celestial prominence blood point. His grandpa had explained how difficult it was for even veteran masters to train this spot. He recalled his grandpa saying that even a child hitting this spot with all their strength could easily make an adult pass out. The hero's blade connected, making blood spray vividly onto the white background. His opponent staggered, losing balance from the sudden blow. Blood splashed, indicating a successful and critical hit onto the ground below. More blood sprayed as the bright light of the environment intensified. Large drops of blood splattered on the ground. Under the bright sky, the battle seemed to conclude with intense light effects. Nuemun gang fell to the ground, defeated by the hero's precise strike. He lay there, bloodied, surrounded by glowing light effects. The dust settled as the fight came to an end, with the hero breathing heavily. The hero looked down at his opponent's area, his own clothes marked by the fight. He slowly started to collapse from exhaustion. He stood there, bleeding but victorious, surrounded by fallen bodies. Someone watching from a nearby building wondered if it was truly over. The hero stood as the last one standing, surrounded by many unconscious bodies. The observer questioned if the brutal trial had finally ended. An older man, Bu Unsol, expressed his surprise, eyes glowing red. He had high hopes for the hero's swordsmanship, Mukeon, and they were met with dynamic motion surrounding him. He was impressed by the display of skill as the motion lines faded. Bu Unsol of the Blazing Sun sect made a declaration. He announced that the hero passed the second test. The hero, with his eyes glowing red, was declared successful. His body began to glow and fade as he lost consciousness. The surroundings darkened as his form became translucent. He heard a voice calling out Siola, while he began to drift away from the ground. He heard the name Siola again in the fading environment. He wondered where Siola was, searching for her in the whiteness. He heard her happy voice calling him Grandpa. Siola ran towards him, happy to be there, and he reached out for her. But then he spoke, saying he couldn't see her, as Siola stood close by. Siola looked surprised and confused by his words. The vision turned dark, filled with a sense of dread, indicated by the red, grainy background. He saw his grandpa, who also said he couldn't see him, his face distorted in terror. He gasped, a look of terror on his face, with a sound effect emphasizing the shock. The fear of not seeing consumed him, shown by his wide, terrified eyes. He suddenly woke up with a gasp, realizing it was all a dream. He found himself on a ship, surrounded by several other people, looking around in confusion. He looked down at his bandaged body, confused by his current state. He could hear the sounds of waves around him, visible in the bright, churning water. The ship was sailing on vast blue waters. The waves crashed gently against the ship, showing detailed water movement. He was truly out on the open sea, with the ship structure visible near the water. The sounds of the ship moving through the water filled the air as he looked up at the wooden structure. He thought he must be on a ship and wondered if he had fainted during the test. He had lost a lot of blood and was seriously hurt, but now he felt almost no pain. He wondered if the demonic cult had brought a famous doctor to treat him. Anyway, he looked around at the other people on the ship with suspicion. He noticed they all looked strong, and some of their faces seemed familiar. He realized these must be the people who also passed the first test, observing them closely. He observed them closely as one man gave him a disrespectful look. He saw their disrespectful looks towards him. He thought this kind of reaction was completely normal and expected. Then, someone ordered everyone to get off the ship, pointing toward a hatch glowing red. He looked up at the gangplank, wondering what awaited them. The person announced that they had arrived at the next trial. The ship was surrounded by a dark red, ominous glow as the next scene began to set. This next challenge was called the Hell Path. The ship sailed towards a dangerous-looking place with sharp rocks and a terrifying red sky. The water itself looked red, as if reflecting the terrifying path ahead. The air crackled with power, a red glow signaling a harsh transition for those who had passed the checkpoint. Beneath a vast, looming structure, the world was bathed in a fiery red light. A sturdy wooden bridge stretched across turbulent waters, leading to a barren, mountainous landscape. The journey was unsettling, the water splashing against the bridge as a lone figure walked forward. The main character arrived, her thoughts echoing the stark reality of this place. This is hell. A commanding figure in a wide-brimmed hat turned to the survivors, instructing everyone to follow him. He led the group forward, his serious expression leaving no room for questions. The vast reddish sky loomed over sharp rocky formations. A small boat floated on the water below, near a desolate shore filled with countless caves carved into the mountainside. This is a title card and will be skipped as per instructions. The red light continued to shine, illuminating the rocky terrain. The leader declared that the many caves dotting the landscape would be their lodging. He stood before the caves, giving further instructions to the group. Everyone had to return their old clothes and weapons, then wear new robes and swords before coming out. The choice of which cave to pick was entirely theirs. The survivors started looking for a place to stay, some appearing anxious, others more confident. Bu Unsol, observant, scanned the caves, considering her options carefully. She thought one particular cave looked good. Another person found their chosen cave surprisingly comfortable, despite expecting it to be damp. However, one person found a cave too narrow, while another quickly claimed a different spot, leading to immediate tension. The second person argued, questioning if being there first meant one could simply claim a spot without dispute. Someone else tried to calm the argument, reminding them there were plenty of other good spots available. Boo! Unsol silently watched the squabble, thinking how oblivious these people were to the true nature of their situation and the danger they had just survived. She then noticed many who passed the previous checkpoint wore expensive clothes, making her wonder if she had misjudged them. She pondered if most of them were descendants of noble families. It seemed to her that the checkpoint was designed to filter out only those who could be easily sacrificed. Noble figures, dressed in fine robes, were among the survivors, confirming her suspicion. The leader sharply asked Bu Unsol why she still hadn't decided. He told her she had been unusually slow, urging her to make a choice. He sternly reminded Bu Unsol that this was not the time to hesitate. Bu Unsol looked at him, still contemplating her decision. The leader watched her closely, saying he suspected from her eyes that she might survive the next checkpoint, and he wondered what choice she would make here. He pressed her to decide quickly, to which Bu Unsol pointed to a specific, unassuming cave. Bu Unsol stood near the leader, indicating her chosen cave. She pointed to a small, dark, and seemingly dirty cave entrance. The leader stared at her choice, surprised. He looked displeased, noting that Bu Unsol was choosing such a shabby and humble place. His expression initially showed disgust at her choice, but then he quickly changed his mind about Bu Unsol. He realized her cleverness, declaring her, indeed, a prodigy for her choice. He explained that while the cave looked small and dirty from the outside, that was just the entrance. Inside, it was surprisingly spacious. The narrow entrance of the cave also provided a natural defense against ambushes. He observed that most people would avoid such a cave at first sight, but Bu Unsol had inspected it carefully. He approved of her choice and told her to prepare immediately. Bu Unsol had changed into the standard black robes. She now wore the simple, practical clothing provided. She stood ready for what came next. The leader gathered everyone, ready to explain their next tasks. He informed them that this hell contained 10 martial halls. Each hall was dedicated to one of the 10 great martial masters spread out across the landscape. He explained that they could learn the martial arts of any of these masters, choosing to learn all or just one. The choice was entirely theirs, leaving the survivors with a sense of freedom. Their schedule was also free. They could sleep, play, or do whatever they wished. They could practice techniques or train alone, truly doing as they pleased. Bu Unsol, however, found this arrangement strange, knowing that those who created the Jade checkpoint would not let them train peacefully. The other survivors excitedly discussed where they should go, eager to pick the best hall. Many agreed to go to the Firestorm Sword Hall, believing it to be the strongest. The majority of the group hurried toward the Firestorm Sword Hall, leaving Bu Unsol to her own thoughts. The Firestorm Sword Hall was known as the strongest of the 10 great martial masters' places. As the crowd rushed towards the popular hall, Bu Unsol turned to walk in a different direction. She acknowledged that learning the best martial arts would certainly help her. However, she hadn't learned any techniques yet, so advanced training wasn't what she needed most right now. What she truly needed was something fundamental, a strong foundation. She walked alone through the trees, heading towards a less popular path. She was determined in her solo journey. The sun shone brightly on a small, distant building. Bu Unsol walked towards the humble structure, away from the bustling crowd. She continued on her path, leaving the others behind. Bu Unsol looked at the small, unassuming building, wondering if this was truly a martial hall. It was a very simple-looking building, a far cry from the grand halls others were seeking. She approached the small pavilion, curious. This was Nanya Pavilion, a forgotten hall barely remembered among the 10 great martial masters. Yet, it was a place that had produced many top fighters throughout history, a fact illustrated by past figures. Bu Unsol paused, a flicker of memory in her eyes. She remembered her grandfather once telling her about the martial world, and this memory confirmed her choice. She would train here. As she stepped closer, the ground in front of the pavilion began to ripple. She looked down, wondering about the strange movement in the ground. Suddenly, something emerged from the earth. A figure rose from the ground. A man's head popped out of the earth, startling Bu Unsol. The man, half-buried, gruffly asked if she had come wanting to become a 10 martial master. He was Sa, the secret hall master of Nanya Pavilion, a fierce-looking man. This crop is mostly black and will be skipped as it has no narrative content. Sao, with only his head above ground, glared at her. Bu Unsol composed herself and knelt respectfully. She paused for a moment. She confirmed that she had indeed come to learn. She stated her intention, to learn the martial arts of Nanya Pavilion. Sao intently studied her, his eyes narrow and sharp. He looked her up and down, seemingly unimpressed by her appearance. He told her to go back before she brought death upon herself, declaring he had no intention of teaching martial arts. He particularly refused to teach someone as fragile as her. Bu Unsol calmly replied that she had heard mastering Nanya Pavilion's martial arts could grant one the strongest vitality in the world. Sa was surprised she knew so much about his forgotten martial art. He acknowledged her knowledge. He then warned her that even prodigies could barely master the true techniques of this hall. The techniques were extremely difficult and demanding. He explained that their techniques started by remodeling the body, and in her current condition, she would die in less than a day. He told her to leave if she understood. Sa watched her, expecting her to turn and run. Instead, Bu Unsol dropped to the ground, bowing deeply before him. So, utterly bewildered, asked what she was doing. Bu Unsol explained that since he insisted on teaching her personally, as a disciple, she must bow to him. Sa was speechless, calling her crazy. He let out a sigh. He finally relented, agreeing to teach her. He clarified that he would only teach her because it was the order of the demonic hall, warning her not to misunderstand his reasons. With a powerful movement, Sa began to pull himself out of the earth. He rose fully from the ground, revealing his complete form. He stood tall, introducing himself as Sa, the secret hall master of Nanya Pavilion. He then instructed her to call him Master Sa from now on, as he adjusted his robes. Bu Unsol started to introduce herself by name, but Sa cut her off, saying she was simply trainee no one. Bu Unsol looked at him, surprised by his bluntness. Sa raised his hand, ready to begin. He told her to stop talking, as they would begin her training right away. A powerful man with a dragon tattoo on his chest introduced himself as Sa Wu, the master of the secret teachings of the Nanya Pavilion. This powerful man was shirtless, showcasing the intricate dragon tattoo covering his chest. He then adjusted the red sash tied around his waist over his outer garment. His student Bu Unsol tried to introduce himself, but Master Sa quickly cut him off with an outstretched bandaged hand. Bu Unsol stood with a slightly worried expression, observing his new master. Master Sa made a sudden, sharp gesture, causing a dark, shadowy effect to appear. He raised his bandaged hand sharply toward the student. As Master Sa made his move, the air around him seemed to darken with potent energies. Suddenly, the trainee's eyes widened in shock as everything around him started to darken rapidly. The world quickly faded as intense speed lines emphasized the sudden change. He blinked, trying to understand what was happening. but his vision was completely gone. Darkness consumed his sight, making him feel helpless in the sudden void as his eyes turned completely black. A voice reassured him not to worry despite the sudden blindness. The trainee looked worried and confused, questioning what the master meant by the path of the beast. Master Sa explained that he had only temporarily sealed his student's sight using one of the pavilion's secret techniques. This was the first step in learning the foundation unarmed martial arts of Bongak, which was crucial for mastering the beast path. The trainee listened intently, a small bead of sweat tracing down his face, realizing the gravity of the situation. Master Sai continued, saying that if his student could master this path, he would literally gain the heightened abilities of a wild beast. The trainee absorbed the vision, focusing on the glowing lines representing power. The vision deepened, hinting at an immense glowing presence. A bright, fierce wolf head appeared, symbolizing the wild senses he could acquire. Master Sai clarified that it was a martial art that not only boosted all of one's senses, but also gave them the swift reflexes of a wild animal. The trainee imagined a powerful, glowing figure embodying the beast's senses, showing the potential of the training. The vision was intensely bright, showing a powerful, luminous form. Master Sa added that unlike other advanced martial arts, the ultimate level of their school's techniques changed a lot based on each person's own understanding. He placed a foot down, demonstrating the finality of his statement. The trainee stood silently beneath his master's imposing presence, absorbing the information. Master Sai chuckled grimly, mentioning that most people usually die before reaching such a high level. He estimated that it would take about an hour for his student to get used to being blind. The trainee stood alone in the dark, the master having left him to his new challenge. With his sight gone, the trainee felt a mix of frustration and resolve in the darkness. Master Sai left, saying he would return later. The trainee was left to struggle with his new blindness, moving awkwardly on all fours and standing up. He stumbled around, feeling lost and unsure in the darkness, realizing the common saying wasn't true for him yet. He grit his teeth, refusing to wait as he thought about the dangerous environment. He remembered Master Sai saying it would take an hour to adapt to blindness. The trainee thought that waiting an hour was simply too slow for him. He decided he had to get used to his new state as fast as he possibly could, refusing to wait. He stumbled and crawled, creating imaginary opponents to fight, pushing himself to adapt quicker than expected. In this dangerous place, martial artists were constantly targeting each other to become a Simagionin. He couldn't afford to be caught off guard or ambushed while being in such a vulnerable state, executing a dodge. He imagined unseen enemies and sharpened his other senses, practicing defensive moves against phantom attacks. He grit his teeth, pushing through the difficulty of his situation. He quickly moved and dodged, practicing swift reactions even without sight. His body moved instinctively, feeling the impacts of his imagined fights. He grunted in effort, falling and getting up, learning to move and react based on balance rather than sight. He finally understood that without his eyes, his sense of balance was the most important thing to focus on. With this new understanding, he began to master his movements in the dark. Under the starry night sky, he continued to practice, stepping carefully and improving his balance. Master Sai watched from a distance, thinking his student would be wandering around completely lost. But then Master Sa noticed something surprising as he observed the movements. The trainee was not lost. He was moving purposefully, prompting a questioning, from the master. Master Sa observed that his student was unusual because most people would patiently wait for their other senses to awaken after losing their sight. However, this young man was moving around frantically, even creating imaginary opponents to fight, showing great initiative. The trainee moved with quick, intense motions, showing his fast adaptation. Perhaps that was why, Master Sa mused, his student was so exceptional. The trainee leaped into the air, engaging in a fierce practice fight against his unseen foes, surrounded by purple light. He struck out with powerful blows, his movements becoming more fluid and precise. He landed with agility, demonstrating his quick progress in mastering his movements without sight. Master Sa realized his student was adapting very quickly, much faster than he had anticipated. The trainee's determined stance showed his readiness for the next challenge. Master Sa acknowledged his student's rapid progress, saying he had gotten used to the darkness already. With that, Master Sa prepared to escalate the training, drawing his sword which glowed with blue light. He told his student, "From now on, try to dodge my sword," his face stern and determined. Master Sai's sword moved with incredible speed, leaving streaks of blue light in its wake. The luminous blade sliced through the air, heading straight for the trainee. The attack was relentless, a blur of motion and power, impacting the air near the trainee. The sword continued its swift assault, pressing the trainee hard as liquid splashed around. 3 days later, the rigorous training continued under a pouring rain. The sound of sword slashes cut through the rain. The trainee was still being hit, but his movements were more refined, pushing through the pain. He kept fighting, enduring the constant barrages from his master's blade. Rain streamed down, yet the trainee remained focused, facing the relentless attacks. Master Sai stood opposite, his sword a blur, as the trainee faced him with unwavering resolve. The trainee blocked a strike with his arm, showing incredible speed and strength against the incoming attack. He gritted his teeth, absorbing the impact of a powerful blow. Despite the pain, he stood firm, ready for the next move. Master Sa reflected that it had been 3 days, yet his student had not questioned the harsh training. The trainee just kept taking the hits in silence, showing extraordinary endurance. Master Sa asked why he never questioned anything, like how to dodge or the techniques involved in the training. The trainee explained that since the Langa Pavilion's essence was enlightenment, he believed there was a deeper reason behind all of his master's actions. Master Sa let out a small laugh, impressed by his student's understanding. He smiled, confirming that his student was indeed right in his belief. Then, with renewed energy, Master Sa declared they would continue the training. He launched another powerful sword attack, leaping and striking with great force, creating a flash of bright light. The trainee braced himself, trying to anticipate the incoming blow. He closed his eyes, sensing the energy of the sword's path, which was distorted in the image. With his senses heightened, he could almost visualize the sword's trajectory through the darkness. He focused intently, trying to predict the exact path of the blade. He exclaimed that he could feel it, sensing the imminent strike. He clarified that he could see the path of the sword, not just feel it, even without his eyes. He watched the sword's movement in his mind, understanding its flow as the background showed abstract lines of trajectory. However, he still couldn't manage to dodge it, even though he could perceive its path. Master Sai then gave a new command. He yelled for his student to block the incoming attack, resulting in a huge, bright clash. The trainee lunged forward, determined to meet the challenge head-on. With a roar of effort, he managed to block the swift, soundless sword technique. He pushed against the blade with all his might, successfully defending himself. His face strained with intense effort as he blocked the powerful sword. He focused, his entire being committed to holding off the attack. He held his ground, showing remarkable strength and resolve. Master Sai was shocked, asking if his student had really blocked the soundless sword technique. He was amazed that this incredible feat was accomplished in just 3 days of training. The trainee stumbled back from the impact of the block. He grunted in pain but remained on his feet, showing his resilience, while holding a bamboo flask. He wondered inwardly if it was always this hard just to block properly. Master Sai then offered him a drink, telling him to take it. The trainee, with a bloodied face, gratefully accepted the bamboo flask. He took a large gulp of the mysterious liquid. He instantly realized it was not ordinary water. He felt a sudden rush of energy flow through his entire body, replenishing all the blood he had lost, wondering what kind of miracle this was. Master Sa revealed it was celestial spring water, something he had treasured his whole life. He explained that giving it away was not a waste, despite its immense value. He had waited his entire life for someone special. A wide, satisfied grin spread across Master Sa's face, his eyes gleaming with sharp, almost feral light. He believed that he had finally met the greatest prodigy in the world, making his lifelong wait worthwhile. The sky was clear, with white lines stretching across the clouds, hinting at a moment of calm before something important. A grand building stood against a backdrop of towering mountains, as light dust or rain seemed to fall around it. Suddenly, a bright burst of blue energy exploded across the scene. More streaks of blue light followed, showing fast and powerful movements. A young person, Bu Unsol, swung a sword with intense focus, a wave of blue energy following the blade. Another powerful strike sent rings of energy outward, showing a fierce exchange of blows. The blue energy continued to flash, highlighting the swift and forceful movements of the fight. An older man watched with a wide, satisfied grin, his eyes gleaming. Bu Unsol, looking determined, prepared to strike again, wanting their opponent to face their full power once more. More glowing blue energy swirled as Bu Unsol moved with speed. The air shimmered with the intense force of Bu Unsol's powerful attack. Bu Unsol unleashed another strong blow, the sword glowing brightly as it cut through the air. Still, Bu Unsol felt they hadn't reached their limit and pushed themselves further. The older man countered with a surge of dark purple energy. He moved with powerful force, his eyes glowing ominously as he faced Bu Unsol. Bu Unsol held their ground, ready for the next move, never backing down. Bu Unsol's eyes narrowed, showing deep resolve in the face of the elder's power. The elder's kick connected with a burst of light, pushing Bu Unsol back. Bu Unsol blocked an incoming strike with their sword, the impact creating a bright flash. The clash continued, the air filled with the sounds of their fierce battle. Bu Unsol, panting from the effort, wondered why the elder wasn't attacking with even more power. The elder began to laugh, a deep, hearty sound. He threw his head back and laughed, filled with great joy and excitement. The elder expressed his surprise and happiness, realizing the true genius he had been searching for was right in front of him. Bu Unsol's eyes shimmered with a golden light, indicating a profound change. Bu Unsol felt their vision become completely clear again, looking surprised as the elder called out their name. The elder urged Bu Unsol to forget about merely becoming one of the 10 demonic champions. Instead, he wanted Bu Unsol to become an official disciple of the main sect. The elder promised that if Bu Unsol accepted, he would make them one of the most powerful masters in the demonic path within 10 years. Bu Unsol looked thoughtful, considering the elder's amazing offer. This moment marked the start of the 7th chapter of their journey. Bu Unsol weighed the idea of becoming one of the top masters in the demonic path. They believed the elder's grand offer was likely true, given all the incredible things they'd witnessed so far. However, a chilling memory resurfaced of the monster that had killed their grandpa, a being far beyond their current skill. That powerful, shadowy figure still haunted Bu Unsol's thoughts, showing how much stronger they needed to become. In such a dangerous world, Bu Unsol realized the martial arts learned at Langya Pavilion simply wouldn't be enough. With a renewed fire in their eyes, Bu Unsol made a firm decision. Their gaze was unwavering, setting a new, ambitious goal. Bu Unsol declared their intent to become one of the 10 demonic champions. The scene faded to black, emphasizing the weight of Bu Unsol's decision. The elder scoffed, finding it ridiculous to think one could master all the martial arts of the 10 demonic sects. He explained that even a legendary grand master like the Heavenly Demon couldn't do it, as each martial art required a unique body type and energy flow. Illustrations showed different fighting styles, emphasizing how varied and demanding each one was. The elder stressed that even the most talented person could only learn a few styles, and true mastery came from focusing on one. Bu Unsol bowed slightly, apologizing for not agreeing with the elder's advice. The elder looked on, silently understanding Bu Unsol's stubborn resolve. He then conceded that Bu Unsol was set on their path and would not change their mind. The elder let out a sigh, accepting the situation. He agreed to Bu Unsol's choice, stating that from now on, they would learn a different martial art. Bu Unsol looked surprised, mentioning they had just started learning the basics of Langya Pavilion's techniques. The elder clarified that the main sect's martial arts weren't taught from books, and that Bu Unsol had already been learning the beast path. The elder demonstrated a powerful, swift move, surrounded by purple light. The air vibrated with the intense energy of his technique. Another burst of golden-green energy shot forth from his hands. Bu Unsol watched intently as the elder showcased his sword skills, a golden glow surrounding the blade. The elder held his sword with precision, showing the intricate movements of the martial art. He reiterated that Bu Unsol had already been introduced to the main sect's beast path techniques through his earlier attacks. The elder's words sank in, revealing the true nature of their previous sparring session. Bu Unsol finally understood the elder's hidden lesson. A sudden realization dawned on Bu Unsol about the elder's earlier attacks. They understood that all the sword attacks the elder had used before were not just random moves. Instead, those attacks were carefully disguised forms, subtly teaching Bu Unsol. Bu Unsol realized the elder's seemingly aggressive moves were actually the initial forms of the beast path, a clever way of teaching without words. Bu Unsol bowed respectfully, expressing sincere thanks to the elder. The elder dismissed the thanks, explaining that he was simply following orders from the demonic hall. Bu Unsol remembered the spiritual medicine the elder had given, vowing never to forget his kindness. The elder told Bu Unsol to simply forget the gesture. Bu Unsol looked puzzled by the elder's unusual advice. The elder then explained the harsh reality of the martial world. He looked away, his words carrying a heavy truth about life as a martial artist. The elder taught that in their world, it was often best to forget both good deeds and grudges to move forward unburdened. Bu Unsol pondered the elder's words, a new understanding settling in. After a moment of reflection, Bu Unsol prepared to depart. They announced their departure, signaling the end of their time with the elder. Bu Unsol bowed deeply one last time, a sign of respect, before turning to leave. The distant mountains watched as Bu Unsol started on their new journey. Bu Unsol walked away under a vast sky, disappearing into the distance. The elder stood alone, watching Bu Unsol leave. He observed Bu Unsol getting smaller as they walked further and further away. The elder wondered where such a talented individual, a hidden dragon, had come from. He looked up at the sky, a serious expression on his face. The elder predicted that Bu Unsol's arrival would lead to a great bloodstorm sweeping through the Hell Domain. Bu Unsol walked alone, a faint glow surrounding them. Their silhouette was visible against the sunlit ground, a solitary figure continuing their journey. Bu Unsol realized their heightened senses, a side effect of learning the beast path, were causing problems. They felt overwhelmed, sensing far too many things around them. Bu Unsol felt completely exhausted, even without doing any physical activity. They understood that if things continued this way, they wouldn't even be able to get proper rest. Bu Unsol knew they had to learn how to control their overflowing senses. They decided to suppress their senses as much as possible during normal times, to regain control. This suppression felt like turning off a cascade of falling water, stopping the flow of overwhelming input. The intense sensory data, previously like dazzling, colorful droplets, began to recede. The vibrant energies and lights started to dim and shrink. The overwhelming light and colors concentrated into small, controlled points. Finally, the chaotic sensory input calmed, settling into a clear, focused state. Bu Unsol's eyes were sharp and clear once more, feeling confident that they had managed to suppress their senses effectively. Standing in the quiet surroundings, Bu Unsol had successfully mastered the control of their heightened awareness. Bu Unsol unfolded a map or scroll, thinking about their next move. They realized that the demonic hall would not allow continuous training in the Hell Domain forever. Bu Unsol put a finger to their lips, deep in thought. They knew there wasn't much time left before they had to act. Bu Unsol looked determined, confirming there was no other choice for their path forward. Their attention turned to the legend of the Huawu Sword Emperor, a grand master from 700 years ago whose martial arts rivaled the heavenly demon. A powerful figure, the Huawu Sword Emperor, stood in a fiery stance holding his sword high. The Huawu Sword Emperor, Zhou Huaun, looked imposing with glowing eyes and surrounded by an aura of power. Bu Unsol decided the only option was to go to the strongest sect among the 10 demonic sects, the one founded by this legendary emperor. With a sound of determination, Bu Unsol set off towards their new destination. Soon, a magnificent structure appeared, the grand building of the Huawu Sword Sect. The entrance hall shone with a warm golden light. Bu Unsol stood before the towering, ornate doors of the Huawu Sword Sect, ready to seek training. Bu Unsol was impressed, noting that the training grounds looked like a royal palace compared to Lanya Pavilion. Suddenly, someone inside stirred, hearing a sound. A person within the sect wondered who could be visiting at such a late hour. He noticed the symbol on Bu Unsol's clothes. His eyes widened in recognition as he saw the new visitor. The man quickly realized who Bu Unsol was and what their purpose was. Bu Unsol formally stated that they had come to learn the sword arts of the Huawu Sword Sect, showing respect to the master. The sect master, now recognized as a master of the Huawu Sword Sect, instructed Bu Unsol to follow him. He explained that the sect's sword arts were very extensive and required a lot of time to learn. He pointed out that other students who came earlier had already finished the beginner hall and moved on to the intermediate hall. He then asked why Bu Unsol was only arriving after half a month, implying they were late. Bu Unsol explained that they had been busy learning martial arts at Lanya Pavilion for the past 2 weeks. The master was surprised to hear about Lanya Pavilion, asking if Bu Unsol had learned the wild sword there. Bu Unsol confirmed this, looking at the master. The master thought that while Bu Unsol was gifted, it was impossible for anyone to master the beast path in just 2 weeks. He figured the elder at Lanya Pavilion must have simply sent Bu Unsol away to avoid trouble, feeling a bit exasperated. He then introduced himself as Jingjak, the person in charge of the beginner hall. Jingjak told Bu Unsol they could call him Brigade Leader. This marked him as Jingjak, the beginner hall instructor of the Huawu Sword Sect. Jingjak then asked if Bu Unsol was truly sure about learning the Huawu sword techniques, suggesting they could still go to another training ground if they wished. Bu Unsol thanked Jingjak for his concern. Despite the suggestion, Bu Unsol firmly stated their intent to learn the sword arts of the Huawu Sword Sect. Jingjak and Bu Unsol stood facing each other in the grand hall. Jingjak paused, then finally agreed to take Bu Unsol as a student. He took a step, making a soft thud sound on the wooden floor. Jingjak executed a swift, precise move, demonstrating a basic form with a burst of golden energy. The energy from his movement dispersed into the air. Jingjak unrolled a scroll with sword diagrams and principles. He presented the scroll to Bu Unsol, explaining it contained the basic forms and practical principles of the Huawu 13 forms, and told them to start training. Bu Unsol looked at the scroll with a puzzled expression. Hesitantly, Bu Unsol asked what exactly they were supposed to do with the scroll. Bu Unsol's question surprised Jingjak. Jingjak looked taken aback by the question. He asked, astonished, if Bu Unsol couldn't read the sword diagrams. Bu Unsol plainly admitted that they could not. Bu Unsol explained that they had never studied swordsmanship even once before arriving at the sect. Jingjak stared, dumbfounded, at Bu Unsol standing innocently before the complex scroll. Jinjak's face was a picture of utter shock and disbelief. His mind reeled, overwhelmed by the incredible revelation that his new student had absolutely no prior experience with swords. An instructor looked at the young man surprised and asked if he had truly never received any sword training before. The young man confirmed that he had no prior sword experience, leaving the instructor looking thoughtful. The instructor recalled that the young man's records listed him as a scholar, and even during a past battle, his fighting style did not look like any formal sword training. He found it strange that the youth couldn't even read a basic sword manual, yet he had such natural talent. However, the instructor considered the amazing reflexes and sharp eye for detail the youth showed in the second hall, along with his good judgment in choosing a cave to live in. He remembered the young man's fierce determination, and how he fought with raw skill, surrounded by fallen foes. If the young man was truly starting with nothing at all, his potential was enormous. The instructor believed that with proper teaching, the young man could achieve incredible things. He watched the youth with a keen, excited expression, realizing the raw talent before him. Even if the young man couldn't fully understand a manual, he could still recognize the letters. The instructor pointed to a scroll, telling the youth to read the instructions there. The scroll contained teachings on how to release the body and flow effortlessly, which were basic yet important sword principles. The instructor explained that release the body means to relax muscles and move smoothly while using a sword technique. He further explained that the young man must especially relax the tension in his stomach and hips. The youth tried to follow the instructions, bending down and asking if his posture was correct. The instructor thought it was unusual to be teaching such basic movements in a place meant for strong demon warriors. He then guided the young man to stand upright again, explaining that stiffening locks the core and he needed to quiet his mind and loosen up to flow effortlessly. The young man focused deeply, his expression intense as he prepared to adjust his posture. The instructor noticed that the young man's new stance was perfectly correct. He was amazed that the youth understood and copied his instructions instantly. Smiling, the instructor praised the young man, saying his posture was excellent. The instructor helped guide the youth's sword arm, showing him the proper form. The young man grimaced with effort, trying his best to follow the movements. The instructor continued to correct his grip and posture, demonstrating each step carefully. With a sudden flash, the young man gripped the sword, his movements becoming precise. He began to swing the sword with newfound strength and focus, his eyes sharp. A powerful red light shone from his sword, showing the intense energy he put into his swings. The ground beneath him cracked slightly from the force of his powerful movements. The instructor watched with wide eyes, realizing that his initial thoughts were right. This young man truly had an incredible natural talent. He was convinced that the youth possessed a remarkable natural aptitude for swordplay. The instructor then told the young man to imagine an enemy in front of him and execute the Hua 13 forms, asking if he understood the concept of an opponent. He explained that this was the test for promotion to the junior hall, and he would be sensing the sword intent in the young man's technique. The young man looked serious, understanding that this was an important test. He felt that the chance to prove himself had come earlier than he expected, and knew he had to perform well. He imagined a strong enemy in his mind, ready to face it. This imaginary foe was the one he had to defeat in his mind. The form of his imagined opponent appeared, glowing with a dark reddish energy. The spectral opponent held a sword ready for battle, pushing the young man to his limits. The young man's eyes narrowed, his grip on the sword tightening as he prepared to fight. His focus was entirely on the battle ahead, his determination clear. He began the Hua 13 forms, unleashing the first form, called Return the Wind to its source. With a burst of red energy, he moved with speed and force, striking out with his sword. The instructor looked surprised, wondering what he was seeing. The young man's movements were fast and powerful, leaving trails of red light. He continued with the Hua 13 forms, moving into the third form with strong sweeping strikes. His sword clashed against the imaginary foe, creating an intense visual of red energy. He performed the Drifting Cloud Veil of Mist form, moving with incredible power. The instructor watched, wondering if this was truly the Hua 13 forms. As something felt different, his expression showed deep concern and surprise at the intensity of the young man's movements. He recalled the true essence of drifting rain, which should be soft and flowing like clouds. The true drifting rain technique was meant to be gentle and agile. It should flow like a cloud or spread like mist. But the version the youth was performing was shockingly sharp and aggressive. The instructor realized the youth's swordplay was completely different from the original style. The way the young man performed the technique was unexpectedly intense and fierce. The instructor wondered if the young man was purposefully changing the sword form, a feat usually only attempted by grandmasters. He sensed that the adaptive form held a strong, dark energy. This modified form contained a strong killing intent, as if aimed at the person who might have harmed his mentor or family. It was unsettling to see the Hua sex technique, known for its righteousness, twisted like this. The instructor wondered what deep secret the young man could be hiding. He watched the young man's intense expression, feeling that something was definitely wrong. The instructor noticed that the path of the young man's blade was being reshaped by a savage, uncontrolled style of swordplay at his fingertips. The ghostly image of the opponent appeared again as the young man channeled his intense energy into his sword. As the young man continued through the Hua 13 forms, the presence of this savage swordplay became clearer and clearer. The instructor admitted that even he, despite his desire, would not completely mix the forms like that. He knew that if he did, it would no longer be the Hua 13 forms, but an entirely new style, so he decided he had to force it back to the original form. The young man's eyes glowed red with a fierce, unwavering intensity. He moved with incredible speed, his sword a blur as he spun through the air. A dark red energy radiated from him, showing his overwhelming killing intent. The instructor was stunned by the sudden change in the young man's fighting style. The shadowy figure of his opponent seemed to smile, fueling his rage. The young man saw the face of the one who murdered his grandfather in his imaginary foe, and his eyes burned with a murderous desire. His eyes were filled with pure fury and determination. He gritted his teeth, unleashing his pent-up emotions into his sword. A bright red light erupted from his blade as he struck with immense power. The shadow of his foe seemed to brace itself against the furious attack. He executed the seventh sequence of the Hua 13 forms with terrifying intensity. The raw power of the Hua technique flowed through him. He performed the powerful move, overturned the seas, crossed the four oceans with a clear intent to destroy. His movements were incredibly fast, almost a blur. The imagined enemy was caught in the rapid, overwhelming attack. In disbelief, his eyes wide with shock. He noted that the young man's movements were incredibly rapid. The young man's fierce strikes continued relentlessly against the shadowy figure. He delivered blow after blow, leaving no room for the opponent to react. His sword flashed with red energy cutting through the air. The instructor realized that this young man was moving faster than any foe he had ever faced thus far. The imagined foe tried to block, but the attack was too strong. The continuous onslaught left the shadowy figure no chance to defend itself. The young man pushed forward, his intense focus never breaking. His sword cuts continued without mercy, each one infused with dark energy. He grunted from the sheer effort, but his determination remained strong. The young man decided he could not allow his enemy even a moment to escape. He gripped his sword even tighter, preparing for the final push. He resolved to unleash all his remaining forms together. His eyes glowed brightly as he prepared to release his full power. With a furious roar, he let loose an explosion of blue and white energy, attacking his foe from multiple angles. His movements were a flurry of lightning-fast strikes, overwhelming the target. The imaginary foe was struck repeatedly by the overwhelming power. He continued his attack, leaving trails of red light in his wake. His sword danced through the air, creating a web of lethal strikes. The young man's eyes were fixed on his target, his expression unyielding. He delivered a final, devastating blow with full force. The powerful energy trails faded, leaving the imagined battlefield in silence. The shadowy figures of his foes were shattered and scattered by his overwhelming power. The last trace of the imaginary opponent vanished, defeated by his ferocious attack. Only the lingering essence of his powerful sword technique remained. The intense effort left small drops of liquid on the floor, showing his exhaustion. The young man slumped forward, gasping for breath, the image of his foe gone. His grip on the sword loosened slightly as he caught his breath. He slowly lowered his sword, the sound echoing in the hall. The instructor looked at him, realizing the fierce fight he had just witnessed. He mentally acknowledged that he had been completely defeated by the young man's intense performance. In the end, he was still impressed. He then calmly told the exhausted young man that he had passed the test, making the youth look up in surprise. The instructor explained that the purpose of the beginner hall evaluation, instead, they judged his grasp of swordcraft and whether he could apply the Huawu 13 forms in combat. The instructor watched as the young man slowly recovered, his sword resting on the floor. He stated that the young man had shown his skills well enough during the test. The young man still held his sword, waiting for more instructions. The instructor praised his performance, saying it was an excellent display of the Huawu 13 forms. He then instructed the young man to go to the junior hall, acknowledging his successful promotion. The young man, remembering instructor Jingjack's patient teaching despite his lack of sword knowledge, felt deeply grateful. He bowed respectfully, thanking the instructor for everything he had taught him. Instructor Jingjack advised him to continue training hard and diligently from that point on. He smiled gently, but his expression turned serious as he continued to speak. He warned the young man that his sword carried a very strong killing intent. Instructor Jingjack told him to be careful not to let that murderous will consume him entirely. The young man listened carefully, taking the instructor's warning to heart. Instructor Jingjack watched the young man leave, reflecting on his incredible progress. Perhaps because his rate of learning is so high, he was able to learn the savage swordplay in just 2 weeks. The instructor realized that the young man's journey was just beginning. His promotion to the junior hall happened far quicker than anticipated. The doors to the junior hall awaited him. At first, he doubted whether the young man would even reach the junior hall. But now he's convinced. But now he was completely convinced of the youth's remarkable talent. The young man stepped through the grand doors, entering the junior hall. Instructor Jingjack wondered how even the junior hall's instructor would react to such a talent. He gave a knowing smirk, predicting the future. The junior hall's instructor, Qian Unquang, stood among several defeated students, clearly a powerful figure. Qian Unquang dismissively told the young man, a stranger to him, that all the slots were full and he should leave. Instructor Jingjack, knowing Qian Unwang, knew he would be interested. He believed that Qian Unquang would surely be drawn to the talented young man, just as Bu Unsol was. The main character arrived at the intermediate hall, ready for his next challenge. He stepped into the large room where an instructor and other students were already gathered. The instructor noticed him, thinking he looked like someone who had just finished the beginner hall. The instructor believed if it took him over 20 days to learn the basic fire rain sword art, he was not very talented. However, the main character explained he was late because he spent his first 15 days learning in Longya Hall. The instructor was surprised, wondering if the young man wasn't slow after all, but then he quickly suspected he was just a runaway from the B-style lessons. Despite his doubts, the instructor told him he could take a seat since he had passed the beginner hall. The instructor began explaining a new technique, the Fire Rain Thunderclap sword, which was very fast and could even hurt the user, if not handled properly. He further explained that like the regular Fire Rain sword art, it was hard to use effectively in a real fight. However, the instructor called it only basic swordsmanship, just one step in their training, even with its difficulty. Despite his doubts, the instructor told him he could take a seat since he had passed the beginner hall. But he also added that he wasn't sure if the main character would be able to keep up with the advanced training. He then announced that for the upcoming duel, he would judge their skill in handling the sword, not just who won or lost. The instructor called out a student named Awoke Han Song to step forward. Awoke Han Sung was asked to pick an opponent for a duel and asked if he could nominate anyone he wanted. The instructor confirmed that he could choose freely. With a confident smirk, Awoke Han Sung pointed directly at the main character, choosing him. The main character watched Awoke Han Sung with a calm expression. The instructor was taken aback by Awoke Han Sung's choice, remembering he had just allowed him to pick anyone. He silently called Awoke Han Sung a reckless fool for his decision. The instructor questioned why he would pick someone who just came from the beginner hall and told him to choose someone else. However, the main character stepped forward and declared that he would accept the duel. The instructor looked at him in surprise, asking him what he had just said. The main character firmly repeated that he would accept the duel, mentioning he had learned the sword from instructor Jin in the beginner hall. He also expressed his belief that fighting others would help him learn sword skills even faster. The instructor stared at him, clearly annoyed by his words. He wondered if the young man was trying to protect his small pride with only the skills he learned in the beginner class. Despite his irritation, the instructor agreed, saying that understanding one's own skill is important for a martial artist, and pointed to a rack of swords. The instructor hoped the main character's skills were good enough for the advanced hall. Meanwhile, Bok Hansong saw this as a golden chance to shine. Bok Hansong thought that if he could defeat the main character, it would make him stand out among all the other talented students. The two students, the main character and Bok Hansong, stood across from each other with wooden swords, ready to duel. Bok Hansong told the main character he had courage, but he warned him that courage alone was not enough to survive in the dangerous world of martial arts. With a wild, excited grin, Bok Hansong gripped his sword tightly. The instructor gave the signal, telling them to begin the duel. Bok Hansong quickly charged forward, kicking off the ground. He raised his wooden sword high, preparing his first strike. His eyes glowed with fierce intent as he moved in for the attack. Bok Hansong swung his sword with impressive speed. The main character quickly dodged the attack, moving out of the way just in time. Bok Hansong was surprised and impressed by the swift dodge. He pressed his attack, closing the distance and aiming for another hit. Bok Hansong continued his rapid, forceful sword strikes. The main character skillfully blocked the powerful blow. The impact sent a jarring sensation up his arm. He felt a clumsy feeling through his fingertips, confirming his opponent was truly just a beginner. Bok Hansong laughed, calling him a clumsy beginner. He continued to attack with smug confidence. Bok Hansong loudly declared he would show off his Fire Rain Thunderclap sword. He unleashed the Fire Rain Thunderclap sword, a series of quick glowing strikes. Bok Hansong laughed wildly, believing his attack would surely land. It did. His laughter slowly faded as he noticed something unexpected. He was shocked to see the main character dodging every single one of his rapid sword strikes. Bok Hansong grumbled in disbelief that his opponent was avoiding everything. He snarled in frustration as his attacks missed. The main character continued to move gracefully, weaving through the glowing sword slashes. The instructor observed, thinking Bok Hansong's sword technique was quite poor. However, he then noticed that the main character wasn't just fast. His movements seemed to almost predict Bok Hansong's attacks. The instructor wondered if the main character could have possibly learned the legendary Beastao. He quickly dismissed the idea, knowing that while Lang Yahal called Beastao basic, it was actually a very advanced martial art. He knew the Beastao was a supreme martial art, usually only mastered by very experienced, powerful fighters. He couldn't imagine even the greatest genius mastering such an art in just 15 days. The instructor stamped his foot, growing impatient with the main character's defensive play. He told the main character that simply dodging attacks would not be enough for him to be properly evaluated. The instructor reminded him that the duel was meant to showcase his sword skills, not just his reflexes and ability to predict moves. The main character shifted his feet, taking a more offensive stance. With a serious expression, he gripped his sword, preparing his own attack. He looked down for a moment, then shifted his gaze, ready to engage. The main character then launched into a powerful sword strike, glowing with red energy. He moved with a sudden burst of speed and power. His swift, direct attack ended sharply. The other students gasped, recognizing the powerful red attack as the Fire Rain sword art. They watched in awe and surprise as the main character performed the move. Bok Hansong smirked, easily blocking the attack, confident he knew this simple move. He recognized it as just a common move from the Fire Rain sword art. But a moment later, he realized something was subtly different about the main character's technique. Bok Hansong brushed off the feeling, boasting that he could perform that move with his eyes closed. Still overconfident, the main character pressed his advantage with another quick red glowing strike. Bok Hansong cried out in shock, suddenly hit and utterly confused by what had just happened. He looked down at the impact point, bewildered by the unexpected blow. He looked up, realizing this was indeed the Fire Rain sword art, but it felt much more intense. The main character continued his fierce assault with a series of precise glowing red strikes. Bok Hansong's face showed growing fear as he wondered if the main character had been hiding his true skills to mock him. He started to panic, thinking the main character was trying to impress the instructor and move straight to the advanced hall, feeling his own chance slipping away. Bok Hansong glared at the main character, his resolve hardening. He gritted his teeth, refusing to give up his ambition. He declared that he was the one who would reach the advanced hall and unleash the powerful Asura sword method. Bok Hansong performed a deadly, blood-breaking strike. He leaped and spun in the air, delivering a series of furious golden sword slashes. The instructor recognized this as a killing move from the Asura sword sect, but remembered he never said they had to only use the Fire Rain sword. He focused intently on the young main character, wondering how he would handle this. The instructor was deeply impressed that the main character's balance didn't waver even under such a fierce attack. The main character stood firm, deflecting the barrage of glowing red strikes. The instructor watched with a knowing look, a realization dawning on him. He was now certain that the main character had truly mastered the Beastao. Bok Hansong yelled in frustration, admitting that the main character was good at dodging his attacks. He prepared for his ultimate move, his eyes glowing with fierce determination. Bok Hansong shouted that this would be the final blow. The instructor looked visibly shocked by the turn of events. Bok Hansong's sword glowed intensely with red energy. He charged forward with a powerful, decisive strike. Awoke Hansong unleashed his ultimate technique. Bloodwind annihilates the moon, a devastating dark red attack. The main character swiftly drew his sword. He gripped his sword with unwavering focus, ready for the clash. Their swords met with a deafening red explosion, sending shockwaves through the hall. The sharp sound of the final clash filled the room. The other students watched in horror and shock as the duel reached its brutal conclusion, the aftermath with a solemn expression. The main character had countered with the 13th move of the Fire Rain sword art. He combined it with the advanced technique of the beginningless extremes martial art, surrounded by a radiant blue and white aura. A final, decisive sound signaled the end of the intense fight. Blood trickled down Awoke Hansong's head as he fell lifelessly. The main character stood over Awoke Hansong, who lay defeated on the ground. He calmly looked down at his fallen opponent. The main character remained standing, holding his sword, the clear victor of the duel. The other students stared in disbelief and terror at the outcome. They were completely stunned by what they had just witnessed. A loud crack filled the air as something crashed, signaling the end of a fierce duel. One person lay still on the ground, and the man in black observed quietly, knowing what this meant. The man in red looked down, realizing the fallen opponent was dead, hit right in a deadly spot. The defeated opponent was struck fatally on a deadly spot. He then turned to the victor, the man in black, asking if he was always a student of the Wandering Night Pavilion. The man in black simply replied, no, keeping his composure. The man in red pressed on, wondering how the man in black mastered the wild beast path in just 2 weeks, but the victor claimed he only learned the basics. The man in red looked annoyed, questioning if the Wandering Night Pavilion now taught their students to lie, clearly not believing the simple answer. He angrily cut off any further explanations, ordering the man in black to clean up the dead body right away. The other students watched in shock and whispered among themselves, horrified by the murder during what should have been a normal sparring session. They wondered if the killer would be punished, but the man in red reminded them this was Hell Island, not a regular martial arts school. He warned that if someone used a killing move, they must also be ready to die themselves. This emphasized the brutal nature of their training, and he declared that the trial would continue despite the deadly outcome. More trials continued, swords clashing and bodies falling to the ground in quick succession. Another student lay defeated, a bloody sword nearby, as the other onlookers reacted with surprise and fear. The man in black, Seol, stood firm, having won his trial with deadly precision. The man in red then announced that the other students had failed their trials. He told them to leave immediately and find another martial arts chamber since they weren't good enough for this one, but one student nervously asked for another chance. With a firm no, the man in red dismissed their plea, showing no mercy. He explained that while they might have passed earlier tests because they were strong, learning the Fire Rain sword needed more than just strength. It required great talent, effort, and pushing past their limits. The group of students looked disappointed, understanding they lacked what was needed to continue. The man in red waved his hand, telling them to leave with a dismissive gesture. The defeated students slowly shuffled out, their footsteps heavy with failure. As they left, Seol stood alone in the center of the hall. The man in red turned to Seol, asking why he wasn't leaving with the others. Seol looked at him, asking if he also had to leave. The man in red confirmed that Seol had won his duel and passed the trial, so he should move on to the advanced trials. However, Seol surprised him by saying he would rather stay in the intermediate chamber than advance. The man in red seemed confused, asking Seol why he would want to stay behind. Seol explained that the only sword technique he had truly learned was the Fire Rain 13 forms. The man in red looked at Seol closely, seeing the sign for the intermediate chamber above the door. He pointed out that Seol had learned the wild beast path and could even see through the Asura sword sex techniques. Yet Seol simply affirmed his statement, leaving the man in red looking utterly perplexed. After a moment, the man in red agreed to teach Seol, promising to teach him the Fire Rain Thundering Sword, which followed the Fire Rain 13 forms. He warned Seol, stating he hated when people made little tricks to try and make an impression. He looked down at Seol with a serious expression. He threatened Seol, saying if he saw him learning any other sword technique apart from the Fire Rain 13 forms, he would immediately behead him. 4 days went by quickly, and the man in red looked serious. The man in red watched Seol train, his expression thoughtful. He had checked all manners possible in the last 4 days. He observed Seol practicing from a distance, noting his dedication. He thought to himself that Seol had no basic sword skills before, but he worked harder than anyone he had seen in the past 4 days. Seol moved with intense focus, his sword flashing. The man in red realized Seol really was just a beginner with the sword, yet his determination and focus were incredibly strong. Seol trained with such fierce energy, his face strained as if his life depended on mastering the moves. The man in red finally understood how Seol had managed to master the wild beast path in just 2 weeks, given his extreme dedication. Seol continued his training, performing moves like the Fire Rain. He twisted his body, executing the Fire Rain Thundering Sword technique with incredible speed and power. His movements were sharp, like extreme lightning. Suddenly, the man in red yelled, "Stop!" halting Seol in his tracks. He told Seol to stop now, saying it looked like he had learned the main ideas of the Fire Rain Thundering Sword. Seol was surprised but listened as the man in red explained that the Fire Rain Thundering Sword twists the body quickly to connect moves together. However, he pointed out that all the moves involve swinging the sword around, which isn't very useful in a real fight. The man in red added that Seol was trying to use every technique in a real-life way. He explained that Seol performed the moves as if trying to kill someone, which Seol thought was the whole point of sword techniques. The man in red explained that while murderous intent is needed for demonic martial arts, there's another path. He clarified that to reach a higher level of martial skill, the Fire Rain Sword actually lets go of the idea of killing, demonstrated by the bloody sword being sheathed. He warned Seol that if he couldn't get rid of the desire to kill in his mind, then he would only end up creating martial arts that would hurt himself. A thought that reminded Seol of what instructor Jin Gak had told him before. The man in red then spoke of his own past, where he lived with a heart full of murderous intent. He had killed everyone who got in his way, surrounded by the ghostly echoes of the fallen. But because of this, he lost both his honor and his pride, and his martial arts skills suffered greatly as a result, as he felt the pain of those he had harmed. He explained that while techniques meant to kill might feel like they lead to higher skill, they are actually a barrier in the endless journey of swordsmanship, so Seol needed to throw away his desire to kill. He then called out Seol, saying that those who wield swords often carry a past filled with sadness and bad luck. Looking down at the small figure on the training grounds, he added that this is why people in the martial arts world hate talking about their past. He spoke with a somber look, reflecting on such painful memories. Seol looked confused, asking why the man was telling him all of this personal information. The man repeated that he had already told Seol, and he too once lived with murder in his heart. He then asked Seol for his name. Looking towards the surrounding architecture, Seol responded with his name, Bu Yunsol. The man in red realized that Seol was the person Jin Gak had mentioned, the one who survived the second trial. He then told Seol that he had a big problem, looking off to the side. Seol looked at him, curious to know what the problem was. The man revealed that Seol lacked the very basics of martial arts, a fundamental flaw indicated by his shocked expression. He explained that all the other competitors had been learning martial arts since they were young. He warned that if Seol were to properly begin learning the Fire Rain Sword in the advanced chamber, the skill gap between him and others would only grow wider. Therefore, Seol needed to quickly master basic martial arts to build a strong foundation for the Fire Rain Sword. The man pointed a finger at Seol, emphasizing his need to learn basics. So, from now on, the man would teach him something new. He announced he would teach Seol the unrivaled lightning and thunder, a technique he had created himself, glowing with golden light. However, he gave a stern warning, explaining that he had damaged nerves in his own fingers trying to master this dangerous technique. He added that it was so risky that if Seol made a mistake, he could lose control of his entire arms. This would mean he wouldn't move on to the advanced chamber at all, and he gestured with his hand glowing with energy. Instead, he would end up crippled, and the man asked if Seol was all right with such a heavy risk, his expression serious. Seol looked at his hands, his gaze firm and resolute. He declared that for the sake of revenge, he could give up even his very soul, his fists clenched tightly. He thanked the man, showing his unwavering determination to take on the dangerous training. A month had passed since he started mastering Jian no Musang, and now he was leaving the intermediate hall. His journey through the halls was progressing. Even though the head instructor said his speed was impressive, he felt it still took longer than he expected. He held a scroll, ready for the next stage of his training. After learning the basic sword arts in the beginner hall and advanced techniques in the intermediate hall, he was prepared for what lay ahead. He had improved significantly. The next level of training awaited him, promising new challenges and further growth in his swordsmanship. He stepped forward towards his future. He arrived at the senior hall where an older instructor sat at the front, with other trainees seated around the room. The atmosphere felt different here. He observed the other trainees, sensing a stronger presence from them compared to those in the intermediate hall. This place held a higher level of skill. His eyes scanned the room, noticing the intense focus of the other students. He felt a change in their general attitude towards him. He could tell the disdain he once faced was no longer present in their eyes. His reputation had clearly shifted. The head instructor of the senior hall looked at him, his gaze sharp and observing. He seemed to know who Bu Unsel was. He felt a distinct energy in the senior hall, different from anything he had encountered before. Even the air itself seemed to carry a unique weight. He noticed the trainees carried an energy far stronger than those in the previous hall. The level of skill here was clearly much higher. He could sense a powerful aura from the other trainees, showing they possessed a much deeper level of energy. Their presence was formidable. The scorn in the trainee's eyes was gone, replaced by something else entirely. He believed this change was because he had killed Bio Kansang. He reflected on how cleaning corpses had only brought him ridicule from others. People had looked down on him for such a task. However, cutting down a man brought a different kind of reaction, one of awe and admiration. He understood how power changed perceptions. The instructor greeted him, recognizing him as Bu Unsel, and mentioned he had heard about him. He invited Bu Unsel to take a seat, ready to begin the lesson. Since there was a new trainee, the instructor decided to explain the Song of Hua Yu Sword and its 7 core teachings once more. He wanted everyone to be on the same page. The instructor began listing the teachings, starting with Pion Sin Guyu Ryok, which meant strength flowed through the entire body. Bu Unsul listened carefully. He continued with more teachings like Ipshin Jungjung for proper balance and Ham Hyung Balbei for chest and back posture. He also explained Ilbal Misim Ip to avoid overreaching on the first strike. Bu Unsul understood these teachings deeply. A golden light seemed to emanate around him as he absorbed the knowledge. He realized that without mastering the advanced sword arts in the intermediate hall, he would never have truly grasped the meaning of these complex teachings. His previous training was crucial. The instructor announced the end of the day's interpretation of the Dharma. Then he called out Bu Unsul's name specifically. He asked Bu Unsul to come with him for a moment, hinting at a private conversation or test. Bu Unsul silently agreed. Bu Unsul looked at the instructor with a focused expression. He was ready for whatever the instructor had in store for him. This chapter marks the 11th part of the Great Heavenly Demon Sovereign. Bu Unsul followed the instructor through a serene outdoor area, surrounded by trees and traditional buildings. The light of the sun filtered through the leaves. The instructor explained Mu Jiam Sung Yu Jiam, which means no sword triumphs over the sword. It described a state where one could defeat an armed opponent even without a weapon. In simple terms, he clarified that true swordsmanship knows no limits, whether one holds a blade or not. It's about skill beyond the weapon itself. Suddenly, the instructor picked up a small leafy branch. He held it like a weapon, ready to strike. Without warning, the instructor lunged forward, attacking Bu Unsul swiftly with the leaf branch. The movement was fast and sharp. Bu Unsul was caught off guard, quickly dodging the unexpected attack. He reacted purely on instinct. The instructor then posed a question to Bu Unsul, his eyes gleaming. He was testing Bu Unsul's understanding and ability. He asked Bu Unsul to imagine a sudden attack, just like the one he just faced. But this time, Bu Unsul would have no sword in his hand. Bu Unsul's eyes widened in thought, considering the instructor's challenge. He had to think quickly about how to respond. The instructor explained that the other trainees in the senior hall had already mastered the first technique of Hua U sword, which was called Hyun Ji Yu Hyun. It was a dazzling and profound skill. Now, the other trainees had moved on to the stage of sword discourse, a more advanced form of discussion and practice. Bu Unsul felt the pressure to keep up. The instructor warned Bu Unsul that if he could not understand or keep up with his current question, he would be cast out without hesitation. He stressed the importance of a careful answer. Bu Unsul paused, looking at the instructor holding the leafy branch. He pondered the crucial question. He decided on his answer, his gaze hardening with determination. He knew he had to prove himself. Bu Unsul confidently stated that if he had no sword, he would use his opponent's blade instead. It was a bold and unexpected response. The instructor was taken aback by Bu Unsul's answer, a surprised expression on his face. Bu Unsul stood ready, energy flowing around him. The instructor's reaction was one of shock, seeing Bu Unsul's confidence. Bu Unsul stood firm, prepared for anything. Bu Unsul's determination radiated, showing his resolve. He wasn't backing down. The instructor reacted with a swift, powerful motion. His previous calm demeanor had vanished. Bu Unsul gasped in surprise, realizing how quickly the instructor moved. He was completely caught off guard. The instructor remarked that Bu Unsul's judgment was hasty, implying his answer wasn't quite what he expected. Bu Unsul felt a strong internal push to fight. Bu Unsul looked up, eyes wide with shock as the instructor moved. He couldn't believe the speed. He was stunned to find the instructor already behind him. The man's speed was beyond anything he had anticipated. The instructor spun around, showcasing incredible agility. Bu Unsul struggled to follow his movements. Bu Unsul found it impossible to even guess where the instructor would dodge next. The man's movements were simply too unpredictable. He admitted to himself that while he hadn't expected to catch the instructor, he also didn't think he'd be completely unable to follow his moves. The skill gap was vast. The instructor continued to move with effortless grace. He watched Bu Unsul's struggling reaction. Bu Unsul stumbled, his foot hitting the ground hard as he tried to keep up. He realized he needed to push himself further. He desperately thought that if he couldn't show something truly remarkable here, he wouldn't be allowed to remain in the senior hall. Failure was not an option. He decided to raise his beast's insight to its absolute limit, hoping to read the direction of the instructor's lightning-fast movements. He focused intensely. He reached out his hand, trying to grab the instructor. The air crackled around him with energy. He stretched his hand out towards the instructor, attempting to connect. The leaves on the ground swirled around them. He wished for just one chance, one moment to grasp the instructor's moves and prove his worth. He yearned for a single hit. The instructor continued his swift movements, making it impossible for Bu Unsul to land a blow. Bu Unsul moved quickly. The instructor was incredibly fast, a blur of motion. Bu Unsul just watched as he slipped away. Bu Unsul was completely outmaneuvered, his body flung into the air. He was unable to counter the instructor's speed. He landed roughly on the ground, creating a cloud of dust. The impact was strong. Bu Unsul crashed to the ground, feeling the impact and a sense of defeat. He had failed to land a single hit. He groaned, feeling the pain of his fall and the sting of his failure. He slowly pushed himself up. He let out a small breath, still recovering from the fall. He felt a tap on his shoulder. The instructor, smiling, reached out to help Bu Unsul up from the ground. He seemed pleased despite the outcome. The instructor then surprised him by declaring that he passed the test. Bu Unsul was confused, questioning if he truly passed. Bu Unsul couldn't understand how he passed when he hadn't even landed a single hit. He desperately sought an explanation. The instructor explained that Bu Eun-sol would start learning Hyun Gyun Hyun tomorrow. He instructed him to be at the training grounds earlier than the others before dawn. Bu Eun-sol, understanding the new directive, confirmed his comprehension. He was ready for the next step. Bu Eun-sol bowed respectfully, showing his agreement and readiness to follow the instructor's orders. He was determined to excel. The instructor watched Bu Eun-sol, a thoughtful expression on his face. He recognized Bu Eun-sol's potential. He gently held the leafy branch he used earlier, a subtle smile playing on his lips. His eyes held a deep understanding. He flicked the branch, letting the leaves fly. The moment seemed to carry a deeper meaning. He looked down, his thoughts clear and insightful. He saw something special in Bu Eun-sol. He mused that even a wolf cub is still a wolf, implying that Bu Eun-sol, despite his current state, possessed an inherent strength and talent that would eventually emerge. He recognized Bu Eun-sol's true nature. Bu Eun-sol, now recovered, looked forward with bright, determined eyes. Golden energy swirled around his hands. He let out a small chuckle, feeling a surge of excitement. The challenge ahead invigorated him. He was looking forward to this new training and the challenges it would bring. The sky above was a vibrant mix of colors. The sun began to set over the lush green trees, marking the end of the day's lesson. Bu Eun-sol's training day was over. The day's lesson was officially concluded. Bu Eun-sol stood alone, contemplating his next move. He considered resting or cultivating his energy, but then thought about exploring the Hell Path more. He felt an urge to venture deeper into the area. He recalled his time in the second hall, remembering how quickly fights could break out there. He knew he needed to be prepared for anything, even here. He looked out at the distant mountains and the darkening sky. The rugged terrain suggested hidden dangers. As he walked, he heard the faint sound of footsteps. He wondered who else was out at this hour. He pondered about the footsteps he heard. He decided to pay closer attention. He carefully counted the footsteps. 1, 2, 3, 4. There was more than one person approaching. 5. He concluded, realizing a group of people was heading his way. His senses sharpened. A group of 5 figures emerged from the path, walking with purpose. The sound of their footsteps grew louder. The group stopped in front of him, and one of them called out his name, Bu Eun-sol. It was clearly not a friendly encounter. One of the group members accused Bu Eun-sol of being too full of himself since his time in the intermediate hall. He declared it was time to break that habit. He reminded Bu Eun-sol that he was the one who killed first, so he shouldn't complain about unfairness. He also mentioned that his group, the 5 Peak Swords, were known as geniuses. The leader warned Bu Eun-sol to be ready for what was coming. Bu Eun-sol prepared himself for a fight. Suddenly, Bu Eun-sol sensed something unexpected. He realized there was one more person, an unseen attacker. He quickly turned his head, seeing a new figure poised to strike. His eyes widened in surprise and shock. A different person, another trainee, cried out, "You bastard," as they attacked. This new attacker was moving swiftly. This new person, Seo Jinha, quickly struck one of the 5 Peak Swords from behind. He was caught off guard by the unexpected intervention. The attacked trainee screamed in pain as Seo Jinha landed a powerful blow. The red energy crackled around them. The Seo Jinha struck the trainee firmly across the back. The blow was so strong that blood flew from the man's mouth. The attacked trainee fell to the ground. The fight had started unexpectedly. The attacked trainee lay on the ground, defeated. The other members of the 5 Peak Swords looked on in shock and anger. They gasped, recognizing the new fighter. One of them called out a name in disbelief. Another trainee yelled out, "Seo Jinha." Her eyes glowed with fierce red determination, holding a sword. Seo Jinha stood ready, her movements sharp and decisive. She had made her choice to intervene. Seo Jinha looked at Bu Eun-sol, her expression serious and direct. She had something important to say. She declared that they needed to talk, indicating a crucial discussion awaited them. Bu Eun-sol looked at her. Her eyes, burning with a fierce red light, conveyed the urgency and intensity of her words. She held Bu Eun-sol's gaze with unwavering focus. 2 people stared in shock at Seo Jinha, who stood calmly over a fallen person. Seo Jinha's face showed clear anger, telling them to leave him alone. He said he had no business with them, causing the 2 attackers to look clearly scared. As the others ran, Seo Jinha thought about how strong the man they just faced was, promising to deal with him later. Seo Jinha just scoffed, calling them cowards as they disappeared from sight. He then turned, his expression stern, ready to face whatever came next. His intense eyes reflected the setting sun as he prepared for something important. He looked towards the sky, ready to directly question Bu Eun-sol about her intentions. Seo Jinha walked forward with a determined stride. Bu Eun-sol, with her striking red hair, quickly drew her sword, her face set in a fierce glare. She looked surprised, asking him what he meant by asking whose side she was on. This marked the beginning of Chapter 12 of their intense journey. The elder announced that everyone had learned the first move of the Fire Rain Sword technique. However, You can only say that you have mastered it when you have made it your own. He then called on Bu Unseo, eager to take a look at the fire raindrops she had created. He encouraged her to try it out. Bu Unseo stepped forward, preparing to demonstrate her skill. She held her sword, a focused look on her face. Her eyes sharpened with fierce determination. She moved with swift, powerful slashes, red energy swirling around her in a dazzling display. Her eyes sharpened with fierce determination as she began her demonstration. Her sword moved like a blur, showing incredible speed and precision. She spun and leaped, performing an impressive aerial move with her sword. With a final flourish, she landed gracefully, completing her performance. The elder observed her technique, noting its grounded and precise nature, and that he had made it something filled with murderous intent. He then instructed Bu Unseo to return to her spot. Next is Seo Jinha. Seo Jinha rose from his seated position, ready to step forward. As Seo Jinha stepped up, he briefly glanced back at Bu Unseo. His gaze was sharp, hinting at a hidden observation. Seo Jinha then drew his own sword, which crackled with a strong purple energy. He thought about how Bu Unseo had shown a technique that would have countered his, instead of the first technique of the Fire Rain sword. He performed his move, which glowed with blue energy, recognizing that her earlier display seemed like a warning to him. He moved gracefully, his sword leaving bright trails in the air. Each strike was powerful, showing his deep understanding of martial arts. His technique was strong and fluid, leaving lingering blue light. Bu Unseo looked shocked and a little scared, realizing his meaning. She asked him what he was talking about, but he told her not to pretend she didn't know. He stated that he knew not everyone present truly wanted to become one of the 10 demon masters. Bu Unseo reflected that simply being able to learn the martial arts of the 10 demonic sects alone is an amazing opportunity. However, she also felt that the actual process of participating was very terribly executed. Then a thought came to her. This amazing opportunity is simultaneously... She wondered if it was a trap set to catch someone specific. The image of a trapped fox solidified her suspicions. It seemed to be a cleverly designed trap meant to catch someone important. Looking worried, she wondered if there was a spy among them. Seo Jinha looked at her and said that her face and tone showed she wasn't lying. He told her directly that she wasn't the spy. Seo Jinha was a little disappointed, as he had hoped to have some fun. He then warned her to stop acting out of turn. From that point on, with a fierce glare, he threatened to kill her if she kept bothering him. Seo Jinha walked away, leaving Bu Unseo to think. Bu Unseo pondered the idea of a spy, realizing there was much more happening than she first thought. She thought it made sense since I had been focusing solely on learning the Wandering Beast Pavilion and the Fire Rain Sword sex martial arts. She decided it wasn't something she needed to worry about too much. To her, a spy or any demonic artist was just another opponent to face, and she knew the real trials would begin soon. The sky glowed with the colors of sunset over the rugged mountains. A small rat scurried across the ground. Suddenly, a hand reached down and grabbed the small creature. High above, a bird soared across the dark, stormy sky. Bu Unseo looked up towards the sky, while the sky glowed with the colors of sunset over the rugged mountains. The sky glowed with the colors of sunset over the rugged mountains. Suddenly, a hand reached down and grabbed the small creature. High above, a bird soared across the dark, stormy sky. A grand, traditional building stood quietly in the distance. An elder's hand tapped a scroll, announcing that the training had officially ended. He understood that many might have found learning the rules boring, yet he reminded them that even seasoned martial artists take time to study the deep rules of their arts. He taught them that truly understanding martial arts does not mean you can act it out. He expressed his hope that his lessons would guide them on their path in the Murim world. The elder looked at them with a serious expression. Under a dark and intense sky, he wished them good luck. A tall, ominous mountain swirled with dark energy, standing in the middle of the island. The students heard a strange bell, looking confused about what was happening. The elder shouted, declaring that the moment had arrived. He commanded them all to head to the large stone mountain at the island's center. The imposing stone mountain awaited them under the fading light. 2 figures already stood at the base of the mighty mountain. Many more students arrived, gathering before the mountain. A bearded man confirmed that everyone had gathered. A determined young man looked on, ready for what was next. The bearded man announced that they would now begin the 3rd trial. He stood tall and fierce, his eyes glowing with power. This chapter was brought to life by the creators at Next Level Studio. 2 of the trainees looked confused, wondering if this was truly the 3rd trial and not the 2nd. One of them remembered the intense fight for survival he had just been through, realizing that was indeed the 2nd trial. The image shows a close-up of an eye, perhaps reflecting the realization or the grim nature of the situation. An elder stood next to another imposing figure, addressing the gathered trainees. A trainee looked puzzled, asking how the 10 candidates would be chosen to require such extreme measures. The elder called them foolish for not understanding the ways of the demonic path, raising a dismissive hand. The image shows a trainee looking determined while a monstrous, furry figure looms behind them. A large group of trainees stood in silence on the ground facing the 2 figures on the elevated platform, looking shocked and fearful. The image shows the large group of trainees from above, standing still after hearing the announcement. He repeated his command, emphasizing that they were to kill one another until the 10 candidates were chosen. With a chilling gaze, The main character's eye glowed red as he observed the scene. Many trainees looked terrified, while one of them remained calm, observing the scene with a steady expression. The calm trainee looked on with a knowing or perhaps calculating expression. The elder continued, telling them that hiding in the shadows or running away without fighting would not help them in the long run. He warned that as time passed, the safe areas where they could stay would become smaller. He then revealed that those who remained in the restricted zones would face a terrifying fate, being mercilessly slaughtered by dangerous killing ghosts. The main character felt a strong and deadly aura reaching him even from afar, recognizing the danger of these ghosts. Another trainee, clearly overwhelmed, questioned the possibility of survival against such foes. The elder burst into a loud, mocking laugh, seemingly at the trainees' fear. He challenged them, saying that if they wanted to be among the chosen 10, they had better be capable of handling at least this much. The elder continued, clearly amused by the situation he created. He confirmed that they could indeed attack and fight the killing ghosts, and if they were strong enough, killing them was allowed. He then added a crucial rule. Anyone who managed to kill a killing ghost would instantly become one of the 10 chosen candidates. The elder smirked, making it clear that this was no easy task, but a path to quick victory for the truly strong. A trainee realized with a shocked expression that taking down a single killing ghost was far more difficult than it was to slaughter everyone there. The main character absorbed all the rules, his expression serious and determined, observing the fear around him. The elder further explained that they could either work in groups, roam alone, or set ambushes. Any method to kill was acceptable. His fierce gaze showed the absolute ruthlessness of the trial they were about to face. He made sure everyone understood the harsh reality of the competition by clenching his hand. This brutal test was the only way to become one of the 10 chosen candidates. The scene shifted as Chapter 13 began with a visual representation of the environment change. The protagonist found himself in a rugged, mountainous area. He moved swiftly, his senses alert to his surroundings in the sparse landscape. Top. He quickly ran forward, knowing he couldn't waste any time. He needed to move as fast as possible to secure his position. He quickly ran forward, knowing he couldn't waste any time. He knew he had already drawn too much attention from the other trainees in the previous trials. He looked focused, determined to avoid past mistakes, worried about being surrounded again by those wary of his strength. His first priority was to find a safe place away from the immediate chaos suggested by the surrounding figures. He knew exactly where the safest spot for him would be as he moved quickly. He quickly reached a secluded small house, his chosen refuge, from above. As he landed, he felt something unusual about the ground beneath him. He thought the ground felt different from how it was before he left, sensing an anomaly. He touched the ground, his expression serious as he confirmed his suspicion through touch. His eyes narrowed sharply, sensing that someone was nearby. Suddenly, he saw faint figures in the distance, confirming his feeling that people were approaching, moving toward his location. He quickly turned, his long hair swaying as he observed the movements in the forest. A person stumbled out of the trees, seemingly desperate for safety. The person pleaded, explaining that others were chasing and trying to kill them, crying out for help. The main character gripped his sword, ready for whatever came next, listening to the plea. The injured person promised to repay him generously if he would offer help. The main character first thought it might be a trick, assessing the situation. A close-up of his eyes suggests intense focus while observing the person. The person was indeed covered in blood and injuries, clearly in genuine danger. He sensed 3 pursuers, realizing they had banded together to hunt their target. He really did not want to get involved in their fight. However, he knew it would be a problem if his hiding spot was revealed because of this injured person. He quickly pushed the injured person down, making them hide. He then covered the hiding spot with dirt and leaves. He made sure the person was completely hidden from view within the dense foliage. The pursuers arrived, looking around and wondering where their target had disappeared to. They were amazed that the person could have gotten away so fast. Searching the area, one of the pursuers vowed to kill their target himself, no matter what, looking determined. He ordered his group to move, confident that the target could not have gone far. The pursuers rushed off, their footsteps quickly fading into the distance after the confrontation. The area around the small house returned to a peaceful silence after the pursuers left. The mountain stood tall and quiet under the sky, signifying calm returning to the area. The main character waited patiently for a while, making sure the danger had passed. Eventually, he emerged from the ground, pulling the rescued person with him. The rescued person, relieved, sincerely thanked him for saving their life. They admitted that without his help, they surely would have died. The main character realized that the pit where he hid was not just for hiding, but was a special training spot Elder Saw had prepared for him to enhance his senses. Crouching down, he understood that being inside the earth expanded his beast path senses even further, allowing him to perceive the world through vibrations. He could clearly feel the sound of feet pounding on the ground from a distance. He could also sense the subtle vibrations of swordplay unfolding far away. Through these vibrations, the entire situation became as clear to him as if he could see it with his own eyes. This unique ability to use vibrations to sense everything was indeed part of his Beast Path's training. He closed his eyes, confirming that this was the valuable lesson Elder So intended to teach him. The rescued person suddenly spoke, startling him back to the present. He turned his gaze back to the person who was still standing there, waiting. The rescued person quickly cleared their throat, ready to speak after their shock. They introduced themselves as Guillaume Chioliang from the Blood Sect, smiling brightly. Guillaume Chioliang then politely asked for the main character's name. He suggested they travel together from now on, gesturing toward the path ahead. Guillaume Chioliang explained that when the third trial started, he immediately fled into the forest, but everyone kept attacking and chasing him, making him terrified. He asked if he could travel with the main character, hoping he wouldn't mind. He added that since the main character had already hidden him, he felt a strange sense of trust. The main character gave his silent consent, which Guillaume Chioliang understood as an agreement. The two of them began walking together, Guillaume Chioliang happily following beside him. Guillaume Chioliang looked up at his new companion with a hopeful and grateful smile. The clouds drift across a wide sky, overlooking towering mountain peaks in the distance. Someone breathes heavily, their bodies straining from a long journey or sudden exertion. The sound huff is emphasized. A hand reaches down, perhaps steadying themselves after the exertion, indicated by the huff sound continuing above. His companion is amazed that he can feel the battle's vibrations, and eagerly asks to be taught this incredible skill. The companion's eagerness is met with a quiet, knowing look from the main character, who simply replies, "We'll see." The companion's thoughts turn dark, vowing to get revenge for his fallen brothers. The main character suddenly stops, sensing a familiar and strong presence, his eyes narrowing intensely. A vivid memory of revenge flashes in his mind, showing a deeply unsettling experience from his past. The word revenge echoes. He recognizes this feeling of deep hatred from his own memories, shown through the distressed face in the memory flash. His companion notices the sudden change in his mood and asks what is wrong. The main character declares that their plan has changed, and he will now join the fight ahead, much to his companion's shock. This marks the beginning of Chapter 14 of their journey. A figure sits stealthily on a tree branch, observing the area below. Hiding behind bushes, the main character and his companion cautiously watch the scene unfold. They move swiftly through the dense foliage, hurrying towards the conflict. Suddenly, a hidden attacker launches a surprise assault. The main character expertly blocks the attack with his blade, creating a shower of sparks. The hidden attacker is stunned, seeing the resulting golden rings of energy from the deflected attack. The attacker questions if the main character is also a skilled assassin. The main character quickly readies his weapon, preparing for a counterattack. He slashes powerfully with his sword, cutting through the air with glowing red strikes. His attack lands with brutal force, sending blood splashing as the assassin leaps away. One of the assassins falls to the ground, defeated by the main character's precise strike. The main character notes that while the assassin's skill in hiding was good, it wasn't enough. His companion watches with a slightly disturbed expression as the main character assesses the situation near a fallen body. The main character looks contemplative, sensing that fighting is still happening nearby. His eyes glow intensely red as he deeply considers his own quest for revenge. He wonders if helping to defeat these assassins would bring him the satisfaction of completing his own revenge. He looks down at a group of dead assassins, with a single wounded survivor surrounded by enemies in the distance. The lone survivor, covered in blood, accepts his fate. He accepts his fate, ready for a swift end, as the main character stands before him. An assassin tells him they will grant him a quick death out of respect. But suddenly, another attack surprises them both. The assassin is shocked as the main character appears, expertly blocking another unseen strike. Golden energy radiates from the main character as he moves with incredible speed toward the attacker. He attacks rapidly, leaving the assassin bewildered and wondering who this new fighter is. More enemies emerge, making the main character wonder how many more assassins are left. His eyes burn with a cold, focused intent as another attacker approaches from behind. He lunges forward, determined to eliminate the remaining assassin in front of him. He delivers a powerful upward strike, forcing his opponent back. The assassin groans, wounded, and struggling to continue the fight. The main character is now surrounded by multiple assassins, but he fights through them, drawing blood with each move. He continues his relentless assault, targeting another foe with fierce determination. His companion watches in horror as one of the assassins is swiftly wounded, with blood splashing from the injury. The main character's attacks are a blur of glowing energy, deflecting incoming blows and striking back. Another assassin falls, crying out in pain from the main character's relentless assault. The main character stands poised for a final strike against a determined assassin. He moves in for the kill, delivering a deadly blow with intense focus shown on his face. Blood splatters across the main character's face, but his gaze remains sharp and emotionless after the strike. He continues his fierce attacks, leaving a trail of blood in his wake as he moves past one opponent. His movements are swift and decisive, ensuring no enemy escapes the onslaught. With each powerful strike, more red energy flashes across the scene as he continues fighting. He shows no hesitation, delivering a series of fatal blows to the surrounding foes. The battle is a chaotic display of red, as his power overwhelms his foes. His face is shadowed, but his eyes glow with an intense, unwavering resolve to finish the fight. The man he saved, covered in his own blood, laughs bitterly, feeling a twisted sense of accomplishment. He declares that his revenge is now complete. He believes he has achieved his ultimate goal, standing amidst the defeated assassins. The main character stands alone among the fallen assassins, the battle now seemingly over. His companion peeks out from hiding, wondering if the entire conflict has truly ended, looking small in the background. The main character remains silent, his expression giving nothing away, as the companion says, "Even so, you can't let your guard down." The companion praises the main character's incredible skills, but then reveals a sinister, wide grin as he prepares to strike. Suddenly, the companion reveals a hidden dagger, his face twisting into a sinister, treacherous smile. He plunges the hidden blade into the main character's back in a flash of red energy. The betrayal is swift and shocking, indicated by the violent red motion lines. The dagger finds its mark, piercing the main character with a bright flash of impact. The sound of the blade striking echoes through the air as the companion clashes swords with the main character's attempt to counter. The sharp dagger glows with deadly intent as it deeply wounds him, as the main character twists to block a follow-up. Despite the unexpected attack, the main character swiftly reacts, his yellow eye showing surprise mixed with focus. He twists his body, blocking another quick follow-up attack from his treacherous companion. The companion is utterly surprised, demanding to know how the main character could have anticipated his betrayal. The main character calmly states that the companion himself is the reason he knew. He explains that because of this betrayal, he lost the chance to ask the other fallen enemy a final question. The main character turns to face his betrayer, his posture firm, while the companion looks utterly shocked. The companion, enraged, shouts and demands to know when he was figured out, but the main character reveals he knew from the very start. The companion is left speechless, unable to process this shocking truth. The main character explains that he knew the companion was full of hidden weapons when he was hiding beneath the ground earlier. It further explains that the stiff movement of his spine, as if carrying something heavy on his waist, made it easy to notice. The main character confesses that he kept the companion close, even after knowing his true identity, while the companion looks furious in the background. He admits he was simply curious about the companion's deceptive methods, observing him with a hint of amusement. He desired to understand the ways people try to trick others, shown by the intense focus on the companion's enraged face. He believed that learning about such deception would be very helpful in future battles, which shatters the companion's belief in his own cleverness. The companion screams in fury, convinced that his act was flawless as he attacks. He unleashes a barrage of hidden weapons, throwing them at the main character. He shouts in disbelief that his acting was absolutely perfect. The main character's eyes remain cold and sharp, ready for the incoming attack, as blood spatters near his face. The companion watches in desperate disbelief as the main character prepares to retaliate. The main character notes that he felt a certain way while following the companion, and he wonders if the companion might also be able to predict movements. His eyes glow intensely, showing his heightened awareness and readiness as he prepares to counter the barrage. The main character expertly dodges and deflects the numerous hidden weapons thrown his way. He continues to skillfully avoid the deadly projectiles as the companion screams in frustration. The companion is struck, blood spurting from his body, his face still etched with shock from the recoil of his own attack. He lets out a pained cry as the main character advances, holding his sword ready. The main character looks down at the wounded betrayer with a cold gaze. He tells the companion that hidden weapons are useless once their presence is known, showing his complete understanding. The companion collapses, groaning in defeat and pain, looking up at the main character standing over him. The main character delivers a final decisive blow to the companion. Standing over his defeated betrayer, the main character is covered in blood, his face serious and unyielding. Someone hiding in the shadows was asked if they were trying to escape from the danger. The person, looking quite angry and surprised, seemed to be reacting to the tense situation. One of his followers nervously called out to their leader, feeling the rising tension. The leader explained that he wasn't trying to run away, but believed their current location was not suitable for a proper fight. Suddenly, sharp blades cut through the air, creating a chaotic storm of flying weapons. Amidst the flying blades and splattering blood, a fierce warrior stood ready, surrounded by the chaos. More blood splattered across the area, showing the harsh reality and danger of the ongoing fight. The leader watched the scene unfold, making a dismissive sound, clearly unimpressed by his own men's performance. He silently wished he hadn't brought along his less skilled fighters who couldn't even join the advanced training class. The leader, surrounded by the recent carnage, made a sound of dismissal, clearly unimpressed. A young woman with a sword, who caused all the destruction, approached the area where the men had fallen. She stood calmly among the defeated bodies, holding her sword, while the leader watched her with interest from a distance. She stood firm, surrounded by the wounded men, as the powerful leader watched her. The leader watched the scene, making a dismissive sound as he observed the defeated fighters. He smiled, admitting that her fighting skill was indeed very impressive to witness. He then asked if the special sword technique she had used earlier was known as the Fiery Rain Sword. He introduced himself as Wumunxiang and asked for her name, while she gestured towards the injured fighters. The swordswoman looked on with a serious expression, small scratches visible on her face. Wumunxiang let out a loud laugh, looking confident and amused by her silence. He boldly declared that he had no need to know the name of someone who would soon be defeated. Without warning, he attacked, and their weapons clashed loudly, creating a bright flash of light. Wumunxiang skillfully used his long, whip-like weapon to strike at his opponent with great speed. The swordswoman looked surprised, but quickly prepared her defense, reacting with alarm to Wumunxiang's unexpected move. A warrior stands ready with his broadsword, facing an opponent he calls a demonic beast, trying out some small tricks. He notes that his opponent's trick worked, but the attack did not feel very strong. He understands that his opponent's body is very sturdy because it has been trained for a long time. He remembers an old master teaching him about the late strike technique. However, he feels confident believing he has now found a way to fight against his opponent's moves. This technique means being even a tiny bit faster than your enemy right at the moment you hit them. He explains that by changing how he uses the absorbing technique, he can make his sword move faster than its own path. No narration for this crop as it's a chapter title based on context. He cries out and charges forward, getting ready to attack his opponent. He explains his strategy. He will not fight against the pulling force from his enemy. Instead, he lets himself be pulled, and his sword glows with power. His opponent uses a blue energy field to pull him up into the air. He is quickly pulled down towards his opponent with great speed. As he is pulled, he positions his sword to strike from above. He reveals that his plan is to change the direction of his attack at the last second. The opponent below reacts in surprise as the attack's path shifts suddenly. Their swords clash fiercely in midair, creating a powerful impact. Another powerful blow connects between the two fighters. The opponent is surprised and lets out a cry as the attack lands. The warrior, who was pulled, is now on the offensive, striking his foe. His opponent wonders if this is the absorbing technique and finds it impossible, as that technique is strong enough to pull large rocks. He is stunned, thinking that even great sword masters would find it hard to use such power so smartly. He cannot believe that a young person like him could perform such a difficult move. The young warrior attacks once more, determined. The young warrior stands in a powerful stance, surrounded by glowing energy, ready for another strike. He thinks to himself that his opponent's absorption technique is useless. He realizes that the stronger the opponent's absorption technique becomes, the faster his own sword will strike. He unleashes a series of rapid sword strikes, creating glowing blue lines. The attacks continue to hit with great force. Both fighters move quickly, exchanging many blows in a blur of action. His opponent, frustrated, wonders how long this pathetic trick will keep working. The older warrior is hit again, blood coming from his mouth. The young warrior notices a change in his opponent's movements. He realizes that the absorption technique has disappeared and says his opponent is strong enough without it. The older warrior looks very angry, his eyes glowing white, preparing to fight without his special technique. He shouts, telling his opponent to take this as he prepares a direct attack. He rushes forward quickly, aiming for a swift strike. He brings his sword down with fierce determination. The young warrior watches with focused eyes, ready for the incoming attack. He reveals he has been waiting for this moment and is about to use Firestorm Sword Hall first move. Red energy surrounds him as he prepares his next devastating sword technique. His expression is serious and intense, showing the power he is about to unleash. He is ready to use his Mystic Profound Sword technique. He leaps into the air, bringing his red glowing sword down on his surprised opponent. The powerful red attack crashes down with immense force. After the clash, both fighters are shown standing apart, wounded from the powerful exchange. The young warrior is bleeding from several cuts on his face and body. His older opponent is also injured, showing the toll of their intense battle. The sound of a painful blow echoes through the area. Blood splatters violently, marking the severity of the latest strike. The older warrior is covered in blood, clearly suffering a critical injury. He stumbles and falls, unable to stand any longer. The sound of his body hitting the ground indicates his defeat. The young warrior looks down at the fallen opponent, confirming he knows the technique used. He names the technique, Firestorm Sword Hall, first move, Mystic Profound Sword technique. Despite winning, the young warrior is also injured and thinks to himself that the fight was very dangerous. He explains that he had to change a defensive move into a fatal attack. He further explains that to do this, he had to take all the opponent's hits on himself, and he never thought anyone could interpret the Mystic Profound Sword that way. The young warrior then walks away, leaving his defeated foe behind, who asks if he is just leaving. The young warrior states that the fallen opponent has nothing to do with his revenge, causing the defeated warrior to look surprised. The injured warrior thinks that even among those who come to greet him, there are people like this young warrior. The young warrior calls his opponent interesting and tells him they should not meet again before leaving. The young warrior walks away, leaving the area behind. He continues to walk into the distance, leaving the defeated and injured fighter kneeling on the ground. The injured fighter collapses completely, now lying on the ground. Suddenly, a new hooded figure stands over the fallen warrior. The hooded figure asks if Peng-ak came to kill someone as unimportant as them. The hooded figure reveals the fallen fighter's identity, Peng-ak of the Hebei Peng family. The hooded figure remarks that Peng-ak was quite useful for a traditional fighter, calling it a pity. Peng-ak is shocked and asks if the hooded figure knew his identity from the start. The hooded figure stares down at Peng-ak, who is bleeding and shocked. The hooded figure simply says, "Farewell." The hooded figure raises a sword, ready to deliver a final blow. A bright red flash indicates a swift and deadly attack. Blood splatters across the scene, confirming the attack has been carried out. The scene changes to a quiet, natural landscape under a dark, starry sky. A peaceful river flows through the quiet, forested area. Someone walks through the peaceful woods, their steps making soft sounds. It is Seo Jinha, the young warrior who looks tired and badly injured. He leans against a tree, clearly struggling from his wounds. His hand is bleeding heavily, showing the extent of his injuries. His sword falls from his grasp and clatters to the ground. Seo Jinha looks up in agony, his face contorted in pain. Another shadowy figure appears, telling Seo Jinha that he has tough luck. Seo Jinha looks up to see the new figure approaching. The figure taunts Seo Jinha, saying he was hit by a special poison needle and will die without the antidote. Many other figures emerge from the trees, surrounding Seo Jinha completely. Seo Jinha curses, realizing that people are using special techniques and poison in a very organized way against him. He understands that there are limits to trying to fight alone. One of the ambushers asks if he is trying to fight with his left hand. The ambusher adds that no matter how skilled Seo Jinha is, someone good with their right hand cannot suddenly fight well with their left. The ambusher advises Seo Jinha to simply give up. The ambushers attack Seo Jinha from all sides. He is overwhelmed by the multiple opponents. The attackers close in, moving with speed and coordination. Seo Jinha attempts to defend himself against the barrage of attacks but struggles. He is struck once more, feeling intense pain. Seo Jinha cries out in pain, realizing he has been hit by another poison needle. He thinks that if he doesn't drink the antidote very soon, it will be over for him. He feels a sense of despair, realizing his situation is dire. He knows that at this point it is already too late for him. His eyes glow with a fierce reddish light, showing his agony and possible defiance. Suddenly, one of the ambushers falls, surprising the others, who wonder who ambushed them. The remaining ambushers look up in shock, startled by the unexpected interference. A mysterious figure drops down from above, attacking with great force. The ambushers react with fear and surprise at the new arrival. The unknown attacker lands, their eyes gleaming with cold intensity in the darkness. A lone fighter, covered in blood, stood ready with a sword, facing an opponent in a fierce battle. The enemy screamed in pain, their eyes wide with fear as blood splattered. More blood covered the enemy's face as they fell to the ground. The fighters swung their sword with a powerful glowing strike. Their eyes glowed with fierce determination as they continued the fight. Another enemy cried out as they were struck, blood flying into the air. A defeated foe lay on the ground, blood gushing from their face as life left their eyes. The fighter, now victorious, sheathed their sword and wiped some blood from their face. Another body lay still on the ground, adding to the silent defeat. This marked the beginning of a new chapter in their intense journey. The fighter admitted to themselves that the battle was not easy and would have been very dangerous if they hadn't seen through the enemy's hidden moves. Their blood-splattered eyes showed the toll of the fight. They looked down at the fallen enemy, who was slowly losing consciousness. The life of the defeated foe was fading away. The fighter observed the enemy's face, noting the lingering desire for life in their eyes. With a deep thought, the fighter turned and began to walk away. They walked through a forest littered with the bodies of many fallen enemies. They paused beside one body, feeling that this person's death was somehow different from the others. A flash of memory or thought showed them with dark power, moving with speed. The fighter appeared, shrouded in shadow, with eyes burning bright. They wondered how it truly felt to finally achieve revenge. A deeper question arose. Would they themselves be able to smile so freely once their own revenge was complete? A faint, almost sad smile touched their blood-stained lips. The fighter then picked up a spare sword from a fallen enemy. With two swords at their side, they stood ready to continue their path. They walked on, leaving the bloody battlefield behind. A mysterious figure watched from the shadows, and someone wondered if that person was truly him. The shadow quickly disappeared into the environment. More dark, swift movements were seen through the trees. A swirling dark mist suggested powerful hidden movements. It was noted that the fighter remarkably used simple sword techniques to defeat the assassins, even though those moves usually weren't very strong in real fights. The fighter continued to move forward, past more fallen bodies. Darkness briefly covered the scene. Still, many skilled fighters existed, and surviving in this harsh place would be tough without reaching a much higher level of strength. More dead bodies lay scattered around, evidence of another brutal encounter. Suddenly, a quick, sharp movement cut through the air. The next day, a tired fighter braced themselves as they heard shouts and commotion. "Chase him!" someone yelled, spotting the fighter. "He's alone. Don't let him get away." Another voice added. The fighter found themselves surrounded and chased by several enemies wielding long whips. A whip lashed out swiftly, aiming for them. With quick reflexes, the fighter blocked the incoming whip with their sword. The impact pushed them back slightly. More whips came flying, striking with speed. The fighter was hit, and blood splattered from the blow. They realized that the enemies were constantly tracking and following them. The fighter knew they needed a new strategy, or they would surely die for nothing. The chase continued through the open forest, the whips cracking through the air. High above, a powerful presence observed the scene. Two figures stood on a mountain peak, silhouetted against the bright sky. They looked down upon the world below, a vast and harsh land. The older, burly man asked his companion about the current situation. His subordinate reported that out of 86 trainees, only 41 were still alive after just 3 days. The old man's eyes glowed red, showing his stern approval of the brutal selection. Down below, the fighter continued to battle fiercely, their face smeared with blood. The old man stated that this meant only the truly strong and capable had survived. He decided it was time for those remaining to fully show their skills. He then asked for the map. A subordinate quickly handed him the requested map. Back in the chase, one of the assassins smirked, believing they had finally cornered their prey. But the fighter moved with incredible speed, dodging the incoming attack. The other assassins continued their relentless pursuit, their whips cracking. The fighter kept running, seemingly trying to escape once more. That fighting in such an open area was a disadvantage due to the nature of the enemy's long-range weapons. The fighter continued to retreat, planning their next move. Then first, a moment of intense thought passed. The old man, his red eyes fixed, made a decisive gesture. He announced that they would restrict the battlefield to a smaller area. He pointed to a building on the map. He ordered for the assassins of the deadly secret to be released inside Firestorm Sword Hall. The Grand Firestorm Sword Hall stood under the setting sun, ready for the next stage of the trials. The fighter quickly ran up the wide steps and entered the hall. Inside, drops of blood already stained the clean floor. 3 assassins were waiting, ready to ambush the fighter. The beautiful Firestorm Sword Hall became a new battleground. The fighter entered, facing the assassins. One assassin wondered if the fighter was hiding inside the hall. Another assassin smirked, thinking the fighter was a desperate trapped rat. A smirking assassin was confident that no matter how far the fighter ran, they couldn't escape the White Horse Squad. Suddenly, an assassin felt a jolt of surprise. The fighter moved incredibly fast, a blur of motion. "Behind you!" an assassin cried out, but it was too late. Another assassin, seeing the attack, cursed, calling their comrade a fool. The fighter countered swiftly, challenging if they really thought such an obvious trick would work. They quickly moved into a low stance, preparing for another strike. The fighter unleashed a powerful sword attack, cutting through an opponent with glowing force. An assassin screamed in agony as the blow landed. The remaining assassins were stunned, wondering how the fighter knew their exact route and movements. The fighter skillfully blocked a whip with their sword, parrying it with ease. They continued to move quickly, showcasing their superior speed. With a sweeping motion, the fighter sent a wave of red energy, hitting multiple attackers at once. Another assassin was struck by the powerful attack and fell. One assassin watched in horror as his comrade fell, yelling, "Damn it!" The fighter maintained a firm grip on their sword, ready for anything. An assassin tried to strike again with their whip, swinging it hard. But then they looked shocked, realizing something important. The fighter thought to themselves that this narrow, enclosed space was perfect for their plan. With deadly speed, the fighter continued to cut down opponents, their sword leaving red trails. An assassin let out a final scream as they were defeated. One of the assassins was completely bewildered by the fighter's strategy. They finally understood. The fighter had deliberately lured them into this building. In their thoughts, a clear strategy formed. The fighter realized that fighting in a narrow space would force the White Horse Squad's formation to shrink, making their power weaker and their attack patterns easier to predict. Since each of these enemies wasn't individually strong, the fighter knew victory was possible if they fought them one by one. The fighter stood surrounded by fallen foes, facing more attackers. An assassin charged, letting out a loud cry. Another assassin furiously attacked, determined to hit the fighter. A whip snapped through the air, trying to snare them. The fighter blocked the attack with a burst of power. They quickly dodged another whip attack, moving swiftly out of the way. The whip missed, cracking harmlessly. The fighter cleverly used the wall to bounce off and redirect a whip attack. The whip bounced off the wall, creating an opening. The fighter, looking a bit tired but showing a slight smile, noted how the whip had reflected off the wall exactly as planned. Seeing this chance, 2 assassins decided to make a run for it. "Now's our chance. Let's get out of here," they yelled to each other. They quickly dashed towards the exit. Suddenly, one of the fleeing assassins gasped in surprise. He looked up in confusion as a hand grabbed his head from behind. A tall, shadowy figure with glowing red eyes appeared, asking him what he thought he was doing. The figure's presence was overwhelming, radiating dangerous red energy. The shadowy figure's face revealed a menacing grin as he asked the terrified assassin if he was trying to escape. This is the title card for the chapter, featuring a stylized, menacing red and black logo. This appears to be an advertisement banner. This panel instructs the reader where to read the series first. The protagonist faces a confrontation, with a masked figure visible at the bottom of the frame. The background suggests an old or dusty interior. The masked figure, known as the Killing Demon, stands ominously in dark attire. The protagonist internally questions the presence of the Killing Demon, wondering about the area's status. He is clearly concerned. The protagonist, holding a bloodstained sword, looks deeply concerned about the situation. The protagonist grips his bloodstained sword tightly as he assesses the threat. He wonders if the area became a restricted zone during their previous fight. Despite the danger, he resolves that he didn't come here just to run away from battle. The protagonist observes the Killing Demon standing still, maintaining a silent and imposing presence across the room. He subtly shifts his weight, his eyes showing fierce determination, readying himself. He thinks about what would happen if Amjin left the restricted zone. He moves swiftly, taking the first step to relocate, indicated by the motion blurring his foot. His face shows intense focus as he prepares to engage or escape. The environment blurs around him, suggesting extreme speed or disorientation. The Killing Demon remains still, a silent and imposing presence, its red eyes visible against the pale mask. The protagonist notes that there is no immediate response from the demon. He decides that this stillness means he should leave the area right away, trying to break the tension. The visual effect indicates rapid movement or evasion from the protagonist, who is reacting to the demon's presence. He moves swiftly, trying to escape the silent, watchful demon by crouching low. This panel focuses only on the dusty wooden floor, suggesting quick movement has just occurred. The protagonist's eyes show intense focus and strain, reflecting his struggle against the powerful opponent. His face is covered in fresh cuts and dried blood, evidence of prior severe fighting. This dark panel focuses on the intense, glowing red eyes of the killing demon. The environment seems energized or disrupted by powerful forces, visualized by bright golden light streaking across the background. More chaotic energy and debris fill the air, suggesting intense combat is ongoing or about to resume. A giant cobra-like image appears behind him, representing his beast path skill, coiled and ready to strike. The golden energy behind him intensifies, showing the activation of a potent technique. The visual suggests the immense power being channeled by the protagonist. He reacts with sudden shock, barely avoiding a deadly strike that emanates from the shadow of the demon. The protagonist moves rapidly, channeling his skills to survive the assault. This close-up shows the blur of movement and energy surrounding the clash. The protagonist's face shows deep concentration and lingering fear from the near miss. He wonders how he should deal with such a formidable opponent's strategy. The world blurs around him as he moves at incredible speed to avoid danger. This panel shows an abstract representation of motion or sensory overload. The visual effect here suggests glitches or sensory distortion during the intense exchange. The protagonist feels the pressure of the moment, his body visibly distorted by the effects of the intense fight. He prepares for a sudden, unexpected move, pushing past the sensory noise. He realizes he must make his movements impossible to predict to survive. A bright, powerful strike flashes across the panel, demonstrating the speed of the demon's attack. The protagonist moves to intercept or dodge the attack, his expression set in grim focus, while the demon observes from the background. The floor shows trails from his incredibly fast and erratic movements as he tries to evade. The intensity of his movement is emphasized by onomatopoeia. The killing demon remains still, a silent and imposing presence, its red eyes glowing menacingly. He narrowly avoids the demon's swift strike, the blade whistling past his ear. The protagonist looks on with wide eyes, showing the strain of barely escaping danger. He continues to dodge, moving his body quickly to avoid getting hit. The panel emphasizes the fast-paced evasion required from the protagonist, eating the demon briefly, attempting to utilize his skills defensively. He is shown reacting to the environment and the immediate threat. This shot emphasizes the physical toll of the fight on the protagonist. He executes another fast, darting movement to reposition himself. The killing demon holds its sword, watching him without emotion, perfectly still. The demon's sword points directly at him, sharp and dangerous, indicating the immediate threat remains. He is momentarily frozen by the realization that he cannot find an opening. The demon's blade is still coming for him, a fatal continuation of the attack. He is completely surprised when the demon suddenly stops its attack mid-motion. He looks at the demon, confused, wondering why it halted its movement. He considers if he accidentally crossed into a restricted zone, which might be why the demon stopped. He stares ahead, his eyes reflecting his confusion and slight fear in the abstract background. He realizes that in the end, all he managed to do was run away with all his strength, failing to create even a small opening against the demon. He runs, looking back at the unmoving demon, a sense of defeat on his face. He accepts that the demon is a true master, making him feel insignificant, like a mere frog at the bottom of a well. The chapter title appears again, marking a transition in the story. The sky glows with dark, fiery colors, creating an intense atmosphere in this landscape shot. A landscape with a mountain peak under a dramatic sky sets the scene for reflection. He thinks about how the killing demon's martial arts are so advanced that they are beyond his understanding. The bearded elder speaks, challenging the protagonist's understanding of martial prowess. The elder explains the timing inherent in superior hunting techniques. A fierce tiger is shown, ready to pounce, highlighting the predator's raw, overwhelming power. The tiger's attention is focused on its vulnerable prey, the deer. This panel shows the powerful legs of the lunging predator. This background panel shows the muted aftermath of the demonstration. The protagonist, back in the present confrontation, ponders the lesson in relation to his current fight. He wonders how he should deal with such a strategy. The elder appears again, reinforcing the lesson about the predator's timing. The elder confirms that the successful predator matches the prey's movement. The elder asks the protagonist what action he should take based on this information. This panel is a transition, showing a blank background as the protagonist processes the question. With a determined look, the protagonist decides to try this new approach. The protagonist's close-up shows a hint of a smile beneath the blood and fatigue. The close-up continues, showing his composed expression as he internalizes his decision. He lets out a loud, frustrated yell, preparing to act. He screams loudly, confronting the demon with all his spirit. He prepares for a sudden, unexpected move, adopting a stance. This panel shows the shadow of the demon looming over the protagonist. The background lines suggest extreme speed and rapid changes in direction. The protagonist begins moving with unpredictable, frantic motion. The killing demon observes his frantic movements with a slight, knowing smile, its red eyes burning. The protagonist continues his erratic movements, focusing on drawing out the demon's attack patterns. This sound effect indicates a sharp clash or strike. The protagonist continues moving rapidly, using his Beast Path skill to evade the predicted attacks. His eyes show intense focus as he maneuvers, determined to survive the onslaught. A close-up on his face shows strain and intense effort. The protagonist is shocked, realizing the demon's attack stopped abruptly, perhaps due to an unexpected input from him. The demon's expression suggests it is aware of the protagonist's attempt to create an opening. The sword clash happens again, indicating the ongoing fight. He braces himself for the next inevitable strike, gritting his teeth. He reminds himself to focus only on the fight, ignoring distractions. He grips his sword tightly, feeling a strange sensation as he struggles against the overwhelming force. He feels something unusual, a new sensation emanating from the situation. He observes the demon's glowing sword, noting a peculiar effect that seems tied to the weapon itself. The glowing sword draws nearer, its energy clearly visible. He realizes that the man is using a strange suction force with his weapon. The fight dynamic shifts as the absorption technique takes effect, pulling the two fighters closer. He is deeply surprised by what he sees reflected in his own eye, likely the demon's expression or the technique's visual effect. He remembers his grandfather's past explanation. This man has been struck by the Oho Danman blade of Heibei's Peng clan. He recalls asking his grandfather how he knew about such a rare technique. His grandfather explained that the blade causes no external wounds but cracks all bones as its internal force pours into the body with each weapon clash. His grandfather also wondered what great evil the victim must have committed to provoke a master from the reclusive Peng clan. The protagonist now fully identifies the technique as the Oho Danman blade from Heibei's Peng clan. He glares at his opponent, surprised by his realization, but ready to fight on. The opponent is clearly shocked that the protagonist knows the secret name of his clan's technique. The opponent demands to know how the protagonist has knowledge of his clan's specific technique. The protagonist calmly explains that another known feature of the Oho Danman blade is its powerful absorption technique. He recalls his grandfather's explanation that this absorption technique is one of the most basic inner force skills. He describes the technique as acting like a swirling vortex, pulling in anything nearby. He realizes that by using this absorption with every single move, it allows for a devastating attack. This technique interferes with the opponent's weapon, breaking their form and making them panic, leading to their defeat. The Peng clan's power is visually compared to a fierce tiger spirit. As the protagonist prepares to counter this knowledge, he acknowledges the style is worthy of Heibei's tiger, the Peng clan, but still questions if Heibei is truly the strongest sect. His grandfather had warned that while tricky, the absorption technique also pulls the user closer to the enemy, making it a dangerous double-edged sword. Understanding this flaw, the protagonist forms a new plan instantly. He decides to use that very absorption technique against his opponent, turning the tables. He grips his sword tightly, preparing to execute his new strategy by utilizing the opponent's own force. He plans to use the absorption force to guide his own sword directly towards the enemy. He drops from above, ready to launch his surprise counterattack directly into the demon's stance. He declares that he will now face the opponent properly, revealing the man's name, Peng Ak of Heibei. Peng Ak is shocked and disoriented to hear the protagonist call him by name. Peng Ak, from the Peng clan of Heibei, shouts his clan's name with pride and aggression. He loudly declares that he will cut down the seeds of the demonic sect. Peng Ak prepares to strike down at the protagonist with great force. He brings his sword down in a powerful sweeping attack. The protagonist moves quickly to counter the descending blade. Peng Ak looks surprised by the protagonist's unexpected defensive posture. He is completely shocked that the protagonist has planted his sword into the ground. The protagonist uses his planted sword as a pivot, expertly redirecting Peng Ak's powerful strike away from him. Peng Ak struggles to maintain his balance after his powerful attack is unexpectedly deflected. The protagonist uses this moment of imbalance to execute a swift, unexpected countermove. Peng Ak cries out in pain as the protagonist delivers a powerful kick directly to his chest. The force of the kick sends Peng Ak flying backward, his sword clattering to the ground. The protagonist stands victorious, holding his sword steady after the decisive blow. His sword remains firmly planted in the ground, just as he had planned for the pivot maneuver. He smiles confidently, realizing his risky strategy to use the absorption technique against the enemy actually worked perfectly. The chapter concludes with the title card graphic. The protagonist reflects on the massive gap in skill, wondering if he was merely a frog at the bottom of a well. The original Korean title card appears. A character looks downward with a pained or concerned expression, set against a dark, foggy forest background. The protagonist stands ready, holding his sword defensively, facing an imposing dark figure in the background. The protagonist recalls the specific knowledge about the opponent's technique, continuing his inner monologue. The narration confirms the specific ability being used by the opponent, the powerful absorption technique. A fighter prepared for battle, gripping their sword tightly as sounds of fighting filled the air. Many warriors fought fiercely, their blades meeting with violent clashes, leaving trails of blood. Many warriors fought fiercely, their blades meeting with violent clashes, leaving trails of blood. One person stood, looking distraught and covered in blood, having just witnessed or been part of the brutal fight. One person stood, looking distraught and covered in blood, having just witnessed or been part of the brutal fight. After the intense battle, many bodies lay still on the ground, leaving only 2 fighters standing amidst the aftermath. The victor stood calmly, holding a sword still red with blood, having clearly won the deadly encounter. Suddenly, one of the remaining fighters showed a pained or surprised look, their eyes glowing faintly red. The injured person called out, asking the victor to stop, claiming they meant no harm as the victor approached. The victor looked down at the injured person, who was now weakened and gasping for breath on the ground. The victor held up a small bottle, knowing it was an antidote, and thought about how much easier it would make dealing with their other enemies. The injured person, still on the ground, struggled to call out and get the victor's attention. The victor turned their head, wondering what the fuss was about. With a pained expression and blood on their lip, the injured person revealed that they had already been poisoned by the enemy. The poisoned person said they had little time left before the poison spread, but the victor replied that they planned to kill everyone there anyway. The victor then coldly stated that they were only letting the injured person live because they weren't even worth the effort to kill directly. The injured person sadly agreed with this harsh assessment. The poisoned person understood they would soon die even if left alone. Seeing themselves as just another rival the victor would eventually remove. In a desperate move, the injured person then shouted, offering to join the victor's side if only they would give them the antidote. 2 figures stood on a high cliff, looking out at a dark, cloudy night sky. One of them had a serious thought about where they were. An old man with fierce red eyes knew this was a very important moment. This was the final fight to decide who would be among the 10 demon champions. Suddenly, the fight began with a flash of light and flying weapons. One fighter plunged downwards, ready for battle. Many fighters clashed in the air, their swords meeting in a flurry of movement. The long-haired fighter seemed to be in the thick of it. This was the start of the 20th chapter, where the battle for supremacy would rage on. Sharp daggers flew through the air, glowing with dangerous energy as they headed toward their targets. More daggers followed, shining brightly and adding to the chaos of the fight. A dark-haired fighter, Bu Unsol, moved swiftly, sword drawn, closing in on an opponent. Bu Unsol's sword met an enemy's, creating a bright burst of energy and light in the dark. The clash continued with force, as the fighters moved quickly, leaving trails of light and blood. Blood spattered violently as Bu Unsol landed a heavy blow on an enemy. Amidst the fierce battle, several fighters engaged at once, their blades glowing with power. Bu Unsol, with glowing red eyes and blood on their clothes, fought with intense desperation. A swift, bloody swipe of a sword cut through the air, showing the brutal nature of the fight. Bu Unsol looked worn out and in pain, their face showing clear signs of struggle. With a powerful blue light, Bu Unsol blocked an attack, pushing back against the enemy. The blue energy from Bu Unsol's defense exploded outward, momentarily pushing back the attackers. Bu Unsol dodged a quick, sharp attack, narrowly avoiding a hit. Another quick strike came, but Bu Unsol managed to avoid it again, showing impressive speed. Bu Unsol and another fighter stood back to back, both panting and looking injured from the ongoing battle. Bu Unsol's arm was bleeding, showing how much they had been hurt during the fight. Many bodies lay on the ground, but the battle was far from over as more fighters still clashed around Bu Unsol. A bloodied sword fell from a hand, hitting the ground with a soft thud. Another fighter struggled to hold their blood-stained sword, their strength clearly fading. Bu Unsol looked down, feeling like this might be the end of their fight. With a deep sigh, Bu Unsol seemed to accept their fate, exhausted. Bu Unsol thought they had given everything they had and felt no regrets. But another fighter standing nearby questioned Bu Unsol's words, asking if they truly had no regrets. A memory flashed through Bu Unsol's mind, showing an old, kind-looking man with a gentle smile. The old man's hand reached out in the memory, as if offering help or comfort. Then the old man's face changed, showing tears of blood and a stern, sad expression. Bu Unsol stammered, thinking about the old man's memory and their own situation. Suddenly, Bu Unsol's eye glowed a fierce red, filled with new resolve. They declared strongly that they would not die in such a place. With renewed power, Bu Unsol lunged at 2 nearby enemies, surprising them with a sudden burst of speed. Bu Unsol gripped their sword tightly, now ready to fight with all their might. They unleashed a powerful, sweeping sword attack that sent multiple enemies flying through the air. The blade glowed brightly as it cut through their opponents, leaving streaks of blood behind. A loud, impactful sound marked the force of Bu Unsol's attacks. Bu Unsol rushed forward, a blur of motion as more enemies fell around them, blood splashing. Another opponent collapsed, unable to withstand the rapid attacks. Bu Unsol moved with incredible speed, slicing through enemy ranks, leaving them no chance to react. With glowing red eyes, Bu Unsol looked deadly, while an enemy shouted in frustration at their power. 2 enemies watched in shock, wondering what kind of amazing sword skill Bu Unsol was using. Seeing Bu Unsol's strength, the enemies decided they needed to kill them first. A new enemy jumped down from above, getting ready to face Bu Unsol. Bu Unsol remembered the advice to feel what was around them. They also remembered being told to move only by instinct, letting their body guide the fight. The image of the elder, Senior So, appeared, asking if Bu Unsol had forgotten his sword art. Bu Unsol's eyes glowed fiercely, understanding the elder's words, and ready to use the full power of the sword art. Their sword movements became a blur of white and blue light, hitting enemies quickly. Enemies were thrown back, defeated by the rapid and powerful strikes, blood splashing around. Bu Unsol stood firm, their sword now stained with more blood, a true warrior in the midst of battle. Senior Saw appeared to be watching, his expression serious, while a woman beside him looked on in surprise. Another opponent fell to the ground, defeated by Bu Unsol's newfound strength. A different enemy struggled on the ground, having just been struck by a powerful blow. Ooh! Yunxiu fully understood the power of Senior So's practical swordsmanship and realized how to win. Their eyes showed extreme focus, ready for the next move. Bu Unsol clashed swords with an opponent, a powerful blue light shining from their weapons. But Bu Unsol suddenly felt a brief moment of confusion or trouble. The opponents smiled, believing they had finally caught Bu Unsol. Bu Unsol was shocked, realizing something important. The opponent seized the moment, aiming a strong punch at Bu Unsol. The punch landed with a bright flash of light and force. Bu Unsol was sent flying backward from the impact. They were knocked through the air by the powerful strike. Bu Unsol continued to be pushed further away by the force of the blow. They finally landed hard, far from where they were fighting just moments before. An enemy leader called out Bu Unsol's name, while a sinister figure with glowing eyes stood nearby. The sinister figure confidently said that Bu Unsol was already dead, but a determined voice cried out, no. Bu Unsol, despite their wounds, screamed fiercely for Bu Unsol to rise, realizing the true challenge. Bu Unsol held their head, feeling a strange pain and confusion. They gasped in pain, realizing something unusual was happening to them. Bu Unsol sat up, surrounded by dark, swirling energy, realizing they were now trapped in a restricted zone. The dark energy pulsed and spread, covering the entire area around Bu Unsol. Bu Unsol looked around, defeated and bleeding, their eyes wide with despair as the darkness surrounded them. A mysterious hooded figure with glowing red eyes appeared within the swirling darkness. The hooded figure was surrounded by a strong dark aura, looking very powerful. The figure's glowing red eyes shone even brighter in the dark, watching Bu Unsol intently. The hooded figure moved with a sudden sharp motion, ready to act. Bu Unsol's eye reflected the hooded figure and the strange dark power, showing their utter shock and fear.